All right. Let's call this meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. We're going to start with a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Sunshine Law notice. In accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, public meetings may be held in person or by means of communication equipment to include streaming services and other online meeting platforms. This meeting is being held in person and through the Zoom meeting platform being broadcast from Borough Hall, 748 River Road, Fairhaven, New Jersey. Public participation for this regular council meeting of February 6, 2023 is available by call-in phone number or through web conference Zoom. Members of the public will be on mute until it is time for questions or comments, which will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to question or comment by phone or through Zoom by the raise hand button and will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice of this meeting was included in a schedule of meetings which was adopted by resolution number 2023-13 and sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, and the Star Ledger on January 6, 2023, posted on the Borough website, the bulletin board in the municipal building, and has remained continuously posted as required under the statute. With adequate notice having been given, the Borough Clerk is directed to include this statement in the minutes of this meeting. Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmember Cole. Hoey. Here. Koch.
Here.
La Barbera.
Here.
Neff. Rodriguez.
Here.
And we have Administrator Casagran. Auditor Ellison is on Zoom. Attorney Cannon and Chief McGovern.
Attorney Cannon. There you go. I told him we couldn't start without you, but I don't know. We're starting with the 2023 budget discussion on workshop. Before we do that, I just wanted to take a moment to talk finance as it relates to the Borough of Fairhaven and our 2023 budget and beyond. Bob Allison, our Borough Auditor, will be leading the discussion along with Borough Administrator Teresa Casagrande to give us a general sense of where we are at this point. After our first finance meeting of 2023, Fairhaven is at an inflection point to ensure our budget is appropriately balanced. We are committed to continue to provide key services to our residents, ensure the proper maintenance of grounds, vehicles, and facilities, and balance new projects. This year's budget is currently going under a stringent review, given we are $500,000 over budget at first glance. The primary factor is that our health benefit costs increase accounts for over 50% of that $500,000. It is important to keep in mind, we are also planning to build a new police department and renovate the current DPW in 2023. Further, we recognize taxes were raised in summer 2022 and the past few years without taking account of the new potential expenses. So what does this mean for the year 2023? We are going to be extremely diligent in where we spend funds. Unfortunately, saying not now for certain projects. We're going to prioritize all projects, balancing multiple factors in a matrix type manner. This includes factors such as life safety, cost, resource constraints, and grant guidelines as applicable. We're going to request creative funding solutions with projects brought to the governing body. For our committees, expect increased communication, transparency, and flexibility for all decisions requiring financial expenditure and/or resources. Know that our governing body and finance committee are committed to being fiscally responsible and ensure we do what is best for Fairhaven. If anyone has any questions or comments, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, the governing body, or the finance committee. With that being said, Borough Administrator Casagrande.
Thank you, Mayor. As the governing body members know, I sent home an email on Friday to them with various documents for their review. I'm not going to go into them in any detail tonight unless the governing body members have questions regarding them. I did send an article from New Jersey League of Municipalities magazine talking about inflation and budgeting, which is very challenging time for budgeting. I sent home the information on the cost of living ordinance that we're introducing tonight. As part of that, I gave an explanation of the two caps that the governing body and our budget and every budget of the state has to deal with. The first cap is the levy cap, and that's how much you can raise the taxes, and that's a hard cap of 2%. The second cap is the appropriations cap, and it's just that, it's just spending, whatever we're appropriating. That is adjusted or fixed every year by the state. It's 2.5% this year and 3.5% if we use the if we introduce the cost of living ordinance. Fairhaven does have the ability, like any town, to bank different caps for a 3-year period. Unfortunately, Fairhaven used a good deal of cap bank when we had to do an emergency appropriation for our affordable housing litigation 2 years ago. And we used a good deal of our appropriation bank at that point. We have about $20,000 left in our appropriation bank. So we're really got our head against what would be a hard cap, except for that little bit of banked area. I sent home our surplus report. The positive news is we have a very strong surplus. Fairhaven is in at least better shape to deal with some of this in this year based on that surplus, which we'll talk about as part of what our options are. To ease your mind a little bit, the draft budget I sent you is a raw budget in so much as that it has not been cut. I gave everything that was asked for by every department so you could see it. Ultimately, this is your budget, it's not my budget. So I didn't want to make any cuts prior to meeting with the finance committee, or at least you seeing what the initial budget was. Like the mayor said, unfortunately, we're really up against it with the appropriations cap. So I'm going to have, I'll turn it over in a few minutes to Bob Allison. He's going to talk about that from 10,000 feet and how it works with the state and what our options are. But I also want to say that to the governing body and to the public, you know, Fairhaven has worked very hard over the last, 10 years to really work on our budget and to do everything we can to keep it as responsible as possible. All of the things we've done, like outsourcing trash or all of our interlocal agreements, they're all outside of cap. They've reduced our expenditures in many ways, which I can explain in detail. And we run a very lean budget. There's not a lot of fat in our budget, which is great. And we could be confident of that. The downside of that is when you're in a situation like this, when you're up against appropriation cap in an inflationary environment, when things are going up, and we can talk about them by category, there's really not a whole lot left to cut. We don't have a lot of fat in our budget. It's been trimmed through the years, and we run a very lean operation here. So that's a good thing in one regard, but it's also, in a much larger budget, we're a little bit like a canary in a coal mine. In a very small town with a very tight budget, when inflation starts to hit and costs are outside our control go up, we're the first one that's going to hit a problem with appropriations cap. I'm going to turn this over to Bob Allison now to explain things from his perspective. I will apologize for Colleen Lapp, our CFO, is not here tonight. She's at a Middletown meeting. They happen to meet tonight, and she's required to be at that meeting, so she could not attend tonight. I'm not as strong in finance as a CFO would be, or certainly our auditor. So if there's a question I can't answer tonight for whatever reason, I'll get you that information if I don't have it at my ready. So I'll turn it over to Bob Allison now, and he'll take you through.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And Teresa, I'm sorry if I'm having some technical difficulties here with the video, but you're probably better off not seeing my face. Anyway, I think Teresa really summarized it well. The good news and the bad news is, the good news is that you're a very well-run town. There is not a lot of meat on the bone. You're down to muscle and tissue right now. Any inflationary costs are going to be felt hard by a town like yours. The mayor mentioned about insurances, and that certainly is a large part of it. But there's also utilities. There's also reclamation fees, pension cost. These are things that are not controllable, and these are things that are that are having a negative effect on your cap budget. Over the past almost decade, I guess inflation has been fairly tame. So the appropriations cap has not reared its head. However, as we all know, in the past year, a lot of my clients last year in the 22 budget also felt this. But in the 23 budget, it's really hitting everyone right between the eyes. The state of New Jersey is having a meeting this week, the Division of Local Government Services, to discuss this matter, because it's not just affecting you, it's affecting everybody. I'll commend Fairhaven in that they're very early in the process of putting their budget together. A lot of other towns and clients of mine have not gotten there yet, so they have not seen what they're going to see with regard to the appropriations cap. Again, this is something which was instituted by the state back in 1977 and then adjusted somewhat in 2010. But they do have a cap of 2.5%, which you can expand to 3.5% by resolution. However, when your energy costs and your insurance costs are going up almost double digits, it kind of makes it impossible. So that's where we are right now. I just looked at the budget a couple of days ago when Colleen had sent it to me. She has cautioned me that that this is still a very rough draft. She's still going through the numbers and getting some final costs, and we'll have and within the next week or so we'll have stronger numbers. But we're also hopeful that the state will come up with something which will give us some relief. But again, the bottom line is costs are going up one way or the other. So whether the state allows us and everyone else to exceed caps or to give exceptions, it's a reality, and it will at some point affect tax rates also if this inflation continues for years to come.
Hey, Bob, quick question.
Yeah.
What do you expect the outcome or even discussion points with the state? Is it that given inflation was so high this year that the appropriations cap isn't commensurate with what it should be this year?
Well, I think there'll be costs to that effect. Again, back in 1977, they actually acknowledged the cost of living increase, but then capped it at 2.5%. But back then, inflation was 4 or 5%. They may carve out exceptions, like we just talked about, insurance, energy costs, things like reclamation fees. They may give some relief for that. There's talk, and I've been talking to some other people. I've been talking to some senators who are advocating for just a reset, just an overall reset of, I'll just throw a percentage out there. They just raise everything 5% and then reset everything, because there is acknowledgement out there that if a cost has gone up 8% this year, it's not going down 5% next year. We hope that it will then continue to have a small inflation, what the Federal Reserve is trying to accomplish right now. So maybe next year's 8% will only be 2%, but that's still 10% over 2 years. So they're having these hard conversations right now. Obviously, it would take a great will for the legislators to raise cap. I'm not sure, they're not even sure yet what they can administratively do that's outside of statute, because most of these things are done by statute, which means it's done by the legislature. However, they are looking to see if there's something that the division themselves can administratively do by keeping the statutes on the books and the caps as they are, however, have exceptions based on extraordinary years like we're having. So I'm confident something will come out of this. A town like Fairhaven's already helped themselves with shared services, which Teresa has said. I have experienced in my career, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, a town much smaller than you, who was really up against it, and they went to referendum. Right, that's always an option for a town. Again, we'll wait to see what comes out of the state, but you can have a referendum and take it to the voters and say, we need to increase our cap by X, we need to increase our taxes by X, or else this is going to happen. And in this particular town, the or else was they disbanded the police department. And then they had a shared service with another town. That's an extreme thing to have to do. That particular town had to do it. But let's see. But if that's the case with overall inflation, then you're going to have half the state do that. And I don't think that's going to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Any other questions?
Bob can hang on for a few minutes just in case there are any questions. As a result of our finance committee meeting, the things that we're proactively going to do right now to address this is, obviously, we're going to introduce the COLA ordinance in tonight's meeting. Noting that the cap calculation number is already based on 3.5% allowance. So if we don't go up 3.5, we're in a deeper hole. It's not really going to have, the problem with your cap is once you use your cap bank, you know, you're not banking any this year till next year. Like you're almost no way to make it up. The appropriations cap's unforgiving because the levy cap, for argument's sake, we have a healthy surplus, and if we want to use more surplus to take the levy down, we can do so. Appropriations cap is non-negotiable. It's a set number, and you know, if we're above it, we have to cut appropriations, or we have to go out for a referendum, or in this case, possibly go to the local finance board and get a waiver. And part of what we're going to ask for in some of this is we're going to see if they, like Bob said, if they give relief to all municipalities, because if they do, off of the meeting they're having on the 8th, we'll get a local finance notice. They'll tell us that, and that'll have us adjust the budget. We're going to seek approval from the state ourselves to move all stormwater management expenses outside of cap, which I have a calculation going for that. It's around $60,000, I believe we can make work. We're going to see if we can, Colleen budgeted our cell tower appropriations. They used to be paid from a revenue line, and we're appropriately supposed to pay them out of the budget line, but they're offset by incoming revenue of the cell tower. So we're going to try to move those outside of cap with the state's approval. I'm also going to see if
What's
we
that
can,
dollar value?
I'm going to say it's about right around 100,000.
It's around 160 now.
And then I'm going to see if we can move the regional health expenses outside of cap, because it really is an interlocal agreement in many respects. We need the state's blessing to do that, but those are things we're going to do proactively. I'm going to make recommendations to cuts to the finance committee first. Once again, it's not my budget. When I set it up, I'll set it up so you'll click on a cell that I'll highlight in red. You'll see what the original ask was. You'll see what I'm recommending that we cut to see how far we can actually get it down. And that some of that can be painful. Some of it can be, does the department need a new car? Well, are we getting a new car this year? Those are the type of examples. Are we going to have money in the budget for Fairhaven Day fireworks? If we're looking to cut several $100,000 out of the budget, nothing's going to be off the table.
Real
yes.
quick, if successful with the insurance, cell tower, and stormwater management, what is the sum that comes out of appropriations?
Maybe 200K.
Okay, so then the delta would be 300K still required in cuts if that.
Right. And actually, once Colleen moved the cell tower into the proper appropriations line and ran her cap numbers, we're even higher than 500K. But whether it's 5 or 6, it's still a big number, and we'll have to whittle our way down.
One other quick question, and what percentage of the total budget is 300K? I.e., how much percentage are we looking to cut out of the budget?
Oh, well, you're talking probably around $10 million budget. So,
So 10% of
appropriations
million,
wise, I'd have to look at the
3 to
appropriations total.
5%, give or take?
Yeah, give or
Okay.
take, that sounds about right.
Thank you.
And off of the Finance Committee's recommendation and the mayor's statement earlier, I'm going to issue a memo to all departments, putting them on notice that, we're over our appropriations cap, and we're going to have to make deep cuts. And it's to be expected. We'll do the best we can, but, it's still going to be a tough run. Certainly, we can use additional surplus to get us below levy cap, which we talked about. And then the resolution you have on tonight's agenda allows us to possibly go to local finance board. There is a law which is referenced, statutes referenced in the resolution, that also allows us to use a surplus to get under the appropriations cap. So that's resolution 2023-65, which is on tonight's agenda, and we have it there just in case we need to go to them. So, it's gonna be right now, my main focus between facilities and the budget, for the next couple of weeks, that's gonna be what we're really zeroing in on. So we'll have a better idea, in a week or two. I'll report back to the finance committee and then look to keep the full governing body, advised. We ideally, would introduce our budget in March. And then, of course, adopt usually in April, depending on what the state's guidelines are time-wise. So we've got time to work on this problem. It was one of the reasons why we got the budget together early this year. So that's where we are. I'm happy to answer any questions that governing body members have, or our auditor, Bob Allison, is still available. And if I don't have the answer, I'll make a note of it and I can get it to you as soon as possible.
I just have one question for Mr. Allison. Is there any guidance you have for us on use of surplus? Prudent, but is.
Well, yeah, I'm an advocate for not using any more surplus than you can replenish next year. Right now, off the top of my head, if I can remember, I think Teresa's a surplus about 3 million right now.
It's 3.032120, and we regenerated last year 1,921,000, and the prior year, and we used 1,200,000 in the budget. We did regenerate more. We have about $400,000 of that regeneration came from an ordinance that we contemplated paying down, but we ended up canceling it, which was included in the purchase of the property across the street. So we actually have 400,000 more in the surplus that we would have had from that placeholder in last year's budget. And we talked about that at the finance committee, and they felt comfortable leaving it the way it is in surplus.
Right, so
it's actually timely that we
so
have.
to answer that, 30% of your budget, or round numbers, is in your surplus. That's a strong number. You're a small town, so I think that's a good number. If you look at AAA rated towns, smaller ones, that's around that number, between 25 and 40%. I think you'll see in surplus. So I wouldn't want to see you go down from that. One of the things that Teresa talked about that is an out with regard to this appropriations cap is to use more surplus, and the division will allow you to exceed your cap, because that's how you're going to pay for it. But if you don't regenerate that, so let's say that you otherwise have a break-even year, that 3 million now next year will be 2.5, because you had to cover that $500,000 of appropriation cap, and without regenerating revenue, which would mean eventually raising taxes. If inflation keeps skyrocketing, it'll only be a matter of a couple of years before you are going to really start to feel that. So I certainly recommend just using the surplus that you can regenerate in the following year, if at all possible.
Thank you. One quick follow-up. Teresa, in your years of experience here in Fairhaven, is this the highest, the lowest? How does this year's surplus compare to prior years?
Well, I gave you a report all the way back to 2009, so that the governing body can see, the ebbs and flows of surplus. As far as, this is the most surplus we've had, but we had a good regeneration year, and we had that extra $400,000. So, you're not, the only other time we had an ability to catch up in surplus, believe it or not, was post Sandy, because we had FEMA funds, and it gave us a little bit of a cushion that year. So we weaned ourselves off of, some use of surplus. But, you can't think, first of all, you can't use surplus in during the year. The only way to bring surplus into the budget, into the borough, is through the budget process. You could do it conceptually speaking, in so much as that if you had to do an emergency appropriation, you could raise it in the following year and use surplus to do that. But, it's not like you're a savings account at home. During the year, you can't fund surplus. So it's a revenue in your budget, just like any other revenue. but it's a consistent revenue. So if you said, hey, why don't we just use all $3 million of the surplus this year and we have no problems? Well, because next year you're gonna have $3 million hole in your budget because you won't have that revenue coming in. So you have to think of it as a revenue in your budget every year. And we, you know, that's why you can take your time and go back and see what we regenerated, what we used, and we try very hard not to use more surplus than we regenerated in the prior year for reasons stated.
Just add a couple more data points. When we met, not to get ahead to the finance committee update, but we talked about doing what we need to do to get this budget squared away this year. And then over the next 10 months, 9 months, whatever's left over, have honest discussions with ourselves and self-reflect on how we can improve our budgetary posture going forward in this new environment, because it's not going to change to what Bob said.
Yeah.
And the surplus is one of those. What are the different surplus scenarios that exist where we can optimize the maximum benefit? My Colleen Lab, I'm not going to speak for her. She had some really, I won't call them standard, but best practices with how we can use surplus to drive additional revenue and what she's done based on previous best practice at other towns. So we're waiting for more information from her. So just add a little more color.
Thank you. I look forward to that.
That's
Thank
good.
you. Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Great
you,
job.
Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Next up, Fairhaven Fields Natural Area Advisory Committee. They're going to present their 2022 annual report. Carolyn Ferguson is here. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the entire committee for all you do to maintain and improve the Fairhaven Fields Natural Area. Thank you to the committee members that are attending tonight. And we are excited to hear the report from
Great.
2022.
Thank you for having us. I'm here to present our 2022 annual report for the Fairhaven Fields Natural Area Advisory Committee. We do have printouts here if anyone could use one. We're going to talk about just an overview of our committee, our 2022 accomplishments, our goals for 2023, some requests for the Borough Council, and then a quick conclusion. Just a little bit about our committee. In 2022, we had 8 members. We are a 10-person committee. We were staffed with 8 people in 2022. For 2023, we now have a full 10 members, which is great. We also do have volunteers who join our members and really serve quite fully as volunteers. Our committee includes some lifetime members, Audrey Engel, Dick Fuller, who's here, and Doris Moraller. Our borough liaison, borough council liaison in 2022 was Meg Christman-Keefe. I'm going to start just with our philosophy, just because it sets the stage well. In 1974, Fairhaven set aside 45 acres of the Fairhaven Fields for the natural area. The natural processes are the primary activity there. Birds, butterflies, trees, bushes, wildflowers, animals, they thrive together in a near self-sustaining environment. We use this vision of an independent ecosystem to drive our activities in the natural area. As an ecosystem, though, the natural area exists within an otherwise developed area, and it's a small area. So it's easy for birds to carry seeds from the outside into the natural area and vice versa. This has happened and it will continue. Such an environment can't exist without assistance. So while we need to actively work within and manage the natural area to approximate the give and take of natural cycles, it's important to keep in mind that our real ultimate goal is to recreate a truly natural environment. We're striving for a place where residents can find enjoyment in nature doing its own thing. We do have a very strong partnership that we're grateful for with the DPW. They collaborate with our committee in the following ways. They keep our natural area trails covered with wood chips per a 3-year schedule that's established by our committee. They work with us during our volunteer weekends and they do the heavier work using machinery that we can't have the volunteers do. And they meet with us monthly in the natural area with our maintenance committee to review and plan maintenance work. And they do plan and execute special projects as they come up. We really want you guys to know the following. Our DPW provides an exceptional level of in-house knowledge and expertise on the overall ecology of the natural area and its plants and trees. We rely on their knowledge of plants, trees, invasives, herbicides, as we explore projects and manage the invasive vines and the non-native plants. We really want to be clear about this one. The representatives from Monmouth County Parks have repeatedly complimented our DPW's level of knowledge about the ecology and managing the space. A little shout out to Dave Carl. He always gets a, comment. They notice his expertise. We're really grateful for the DPW's partnership and expertise. The DPW is a pleasure to work with, and we thank them for their hard work in the natural area. Then we're going to talk about our 2022 accomplishments. We'd like to start with looking back to the goals we set for 2022. Our first goal was community education. We feel like we accomplished that, and we're going to talk a little more about that later. Next goal was to resume the nature walks over COVID. We accomplished that, and we're going to talk a little more about that. We had a goal to partner with other Fairhaven committees to create a joint Earth Day celebration. That was not accomplished, but we began working on it, kind of reaching out. There was previously separate Earth Day activities happening, and we reached out to the committees to try to bring them together. But that was when we learned about Love Where You Live Day, which was kind of in the same time frame. So we let that take precedence. We had a goal to remove non-native species and start planting native species. And in particular, we had mentioned things like Japanese holly and Andromeda. That goal was not accomplished, and it was really deprioritized based on input from the Monmouth County Parks. While these plants are not native, they are not spreading and causing damage. So we were advised to focus on non-natives that are causing damage. So we just changed direction there a bit.
So real quick on that.
Yeah.
It's just a question of, if you had to choose where to focus energy on non-natives, they recommended to discern what causes damage and what doesn't and start there first.
Yeah.
Is that really the topic of the conversation?
Yeah, so there are trees that are not native that just kind of exist without harming.
Yeah.
And, while ideally they would be gone, they're not the first problem. Better to kind of focus on the things that are causing damage and spreading.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Then our next goal is to plant new native trees. We say that's partially accomplished. We did purchase 6 native trees this year that were planted, but our goal is really 20+ trees a year. So we feel like we're not quite where we wanted to be on that one. And then our last goal was to seed the meadows with wildflowers to support pollinators. That was not accomplished, but it is currently in progress for 2023. So now turning to what we did accomplish in 2022. One of the first things we did was we formalized and improved our processes. As an example, we presented our first annual report to the Fairhaven governing body last year. We felt like this increased our visibility and the impact of our committee within the Borough Council and other committees. Also, we created a volunteer weekend planning checklist. So we've always had volunteer weekends twice a year, but we almost were starting from scratch each time. We're trying to get volunteers to help us. So we made a checklist. We have now a list of names that we always go back to. So we're kind of each time able to build on our success. So we're able to run these events a little more efficiently, effectively, and with some consistency. Next, we did community education. Our committee hosted 3 nature walks. More than 20 people attended each of those walks. We also share educational materials in the kiosk in the natural area via our social media channels and at Love Where You Live Day. And the topics included invasive species, natural area ecology, and the leave no trace concept. We worked on some improvement and maintenance activities, and this is a lot of work. We continued our monthly maintenance walks in the natural area with representatives of the DPW to align on our maintenance plans. We ran 2 volunteer weekends where committee members, the DPW, and volunteers worked in the natural area for 4 days, removing invasives and clearing down wood. And if you've ever been at one of these, to see the mountains of wood that are cleared is like truly remarkable. Also, we purchased 6 trees that were planted, and the planting was done as part of an Eagle Scout project.
What does the average tree cost?
I think we usually pay about $100. Mark is our. Oh, what does an average tree cost? 200.
Thank you.
Two of those trees were 400.
Yeah, so somewhere between 200 and 400.
Thank you.
Then one of our major accomplishments this year is that we began using resources from Monmouth County. This was really a first for us and something that we hope to continue. We established a relationship with the Monmouth County Parks this year. They did an evaluation of the natural area and provided the borough and our committee with a 6-page assessment that included valuable information and advice. And we do hope to, we intend to continue this relationship. Kudos to our member Dick Fuller, who really is the person who engaged the county and was, and enabled us to begin this relationship. And this really provided the committee with the professional guidance for the first time in many years. So this is really something that we see as a major accomplishment. Also, we were able to work with the Monmouth County Mosquito Commission. And kudos to our committee member Dave Bordelon at Love Where You Live Day. He met the Monmouth County Mosquito Commission and talked with them, and then arranged for them to treat the creek in June 2022. So great things coming out of Love Where You Live Day too.
Another question, Karen.
Yeah,
Sorry,
sure.
just because I don't want to come back.
We love it.
The so the mosquito aspects and then beginning the engagement with the county, is that set to continue through 2023 to build on the success of last year?
Yes, so Monmouth County, we keep an action item list that kind of make sure we don't forget stuff. So we've added this idea of getting an assessment from Monmouth County Parks every year.
Awesome.
And then the mosquito treatment, I don't know if we're going to need every year, but we would definitely reach out to them again and get their advice.
Awesome. Thank you.
Our next accomplishment was that we initiated work to restore the northwest section of the natural area. In our 2021 annual report, we identified that the northwest section of the natural area was in dire need of restoration. The area is overrun with invasive vines, downed trees. It's largely inaccessible, and it doesn't contribute to the ecology of the natural area. Also, it's an incubator of invasive vines and plants that are spread by wildlife all over the town. So during 2022, the committee actually was able to identify a project to kick off the restoration of this area. So this was really the first action that's been taken. So after years of talking about this, we feel like it was great that we on this. So we made a request for the DPW to cut a trail on the border of the natural area and the Christ Church, which is over by the cell tower. We feel the trail will serve the following purposes. The church property is a mess of vines also, and we would like to create a break to inhibit the church vines from spreading into the natural area once we've begun restoring it. Also, we feel like the border trail provides safe access into the area. It was largely inaccessible. So then we can get in there and evaluate it for next steps. And then also the border trail will demarcate which portion of the problem belongs to the owner of the church property, in the hopes that they can be encouraged to minimize the vines on their property also. Kudos to our member, Mark Olson. He reached out to the pastor of the Christ Church in January, just this month, and had a little talk with him, took a little walk on the property. They were, of course, completely unaware of invasive vines or what problems that could cause. So Mark began the process of sharing some information with them. It was just great to make a little contact, help spread the good word. And then our last accomplishment was that we honored some of our distinguished committee members. As you know, our committee has a long history, and including people that really helped form the natural area in the first place. And we always treat these people with a high degree of respect. So we established 3 lifetime members of the Natural Area Committee. These members have dedicated decades of their lives to preserve and care for the natural area. So our 3 lifetime members, Doris Moraller, Audrey Engel, and Dick Fuller, were honored at the February 2022 Borough Council meeting. And we really thank the Borough Council for helping us to make that happen. And then moving to our goals for 2023. First of all, is that we really want to get some momentum going for the restoration of the northwest section. We plan to present a plan to the Borough Council for the restoration of that area. We hope to do that in March. So our plan is that the border trail is being cut now. We really appreciate, if you haven't seen it, the DPW is doing remarkable work there. They're really working super hard. And then we hope to take an area adjacent to that, kind of follow the lead of what was done on 3rd Street, clear it, and eventually start replanting it with new native trees. So we are going to present a plan, and we hope to gain the Borough Council's approval for that plan in 2023. Our next goal is that we want to spend down our community appeal money. As many of you know, we get about $5,000 a year in community appeal money. We have quite a bit of that accumulated. Despite our best efforts, we haven't successfully spent it in past years. Either we identify projects and they don't happen, or we make a plan and then it gets funded in another way. So really one of our major goals this year is to spend that money down. We want to be good stewards of the donations that we get.
Are those understory plants deer resistant? I don't know if that's the right word.
There is such a thing as deer resistant plants, but a lot of people will say when deer are hungry, they eat everything. So certainly our goal is to try to target plants that will do the best in our situation.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So in terms of spending our money, we have two things that we hope to do: purchase and plant trees and bushes. We want to focus on planting bushes that can create an evergreen understory, planting things like mountain laurel, witch hazel, and native azaleas. And then our second thing that we're spending money on this year, and we actually have already done this and begun it, seeding pollinator-friendly wildflowers in the natural areas meadows. In addition to helping pollinators, we intend for the wildflowers to crowd out the invasive Japanese stilt grass that has taken over one of the meadows. And that was actually advice from the Monmouth County Parks. So we're taking their advice and acting on it. Our third goal is to continue to honor our distinguished committee members. It's hard to think about 2022 without thinking about Jim Engel. He really was a remarkable force in terms of establishing and maintaining the natural area. We do hope to permanently honor him in the natural area, possibly with something similar to the Derry's Pond marker. But like I said, that was a big thing in 2022, and we really admire Jim a lot and are grateful for all his contributions. Our fourth goal is to continue community engagement. We want to continue to host spring and fall volunteer weekends. We want to continue to host nature walks. Our committee member, Paul Ferguson, organizes our nature walks, and he has a plan to introduce some new topics this year. Last year, we did 3 walks with the same host or the same guide. So this year in March, Paul has arranged for a bird expert to do a bird walk with us. Our fifth goal is what Drew mentioned. We want to continue the partnership with the Monmouth County Parks, and we're going to try to make that assessment an annual event. And the last thing is that we really want to improve our committee connection to the borough. We're aware that organizationally our committee reports to the Borough Council. So we have 2 parts to this. One is that we hope to appear more frequently before the Borough Council so that we can understand the Borough Council's goals for our committee, get direction and feedback. And then also to ensure that the work being done by our committee has visibility to the Borough Council, to the borough employees that are involved, and to Fairhaven's taxpayers. Also, we're eager to collaborate effectively with borough processes for communications, spending, generating work orders for the DPW, so that we can deliver maximum value to the Borough Council and to Fairhaven's taxpayers. Then heading towards the end, we have a few requests for the Borough Council. Looking back in 2022, we made 2 requests. One was for professional planning for the northwest section of the natural area. That didn't happen, but since then we have kind of taken it upon ourselves to try to figure this out and to move forward. And then the second request was to add curbs on Fairhaven Road along the Cherry Tree area to address some erosion that was happening in the natural area. That didn't happen, but I believe that's in the plans for the future. I don't know.
Which is then Fairhaven Road Phase 2.
Yes.
Great. And then our 2023 request for the Borough Council. The first thing is the northwest section restoration. Obviously, that's one of our main focuses. We hope that you'll consider and approve a plan that we plan to present in March to restore the northwest section, and we hope that you'll partner with our committee to carry out the plan. The second is to consider the deer problem in the natural area. 2022 is the year that the deer destruction of the understory was discovered, both by our committee and also observed by Monmouth County Parks. We encourage the borough to work with the Monmouth County Parks to devise a plan to address the local deer overpopulation. Like we said, we see the understory being destroyed. it, the idea, it eliminates the ability to walk in the park and have the street noise screened out, have the cars screened out. So it is changing it's changing the nature of that space.
Can I just,
Yeah.
stop with, is Monmouth County Parks, is that where you would turn for managing deer?
No.
I'm just pointing out, Councilwoman Hoey got hit by a deer that came out of that
Thanks.
very natural area we're talking about.
I'm not aware of a program the parks have. I mean, I know, and when we've reached out in the past, we've reached out to the state Division of Fish and Wildlife, but any solution to deer would have to be a regional solution. And there's people for and against, culling the herd or,
That's an interesting
deal.
thought, because I assume if the county does something, though, they're only gonna do it within the confines of the park itself.
They've been doing it. They have a plan and they've been taking action, right? They have hunting in Hartland Park, I believe.
So you're talking about a hunt of some sort. Is that
I
what you're-
would take their advice for what to do. They have talked to us about a variety of things they've tried, some without success. But they definitely have opinions on
They just
it.
did a week of hunting in Hartshorn in December.
Yeah,
All the signs
I just want to say, since we stopped you here, I think this is a really important point. I live on Fairhaven Road, close to Ridge, and I see almost every time I drive, when it's getting dark, between that corner between Ridge Road and Fairhaven Road is a crossing area for the deer. They're always crossing there, and I think it is a dangerous location. And if you don't know the area, you might not know you need to watch out for the deer there. So I think there's a safety issue as far as driving and possibly being, hitting a deer. The second issue that, I think it's more difficult to maybe account for, because I don't have the numbers, but I suspect a good number of people in Fairhaven have had Lyme disease. I know deer are not the only animal involved with the cycle for, the life cycle of the tick. But I really think we have a problem with Lyme disease in town and with ticks on Fairhaven Fields. And I'm not, I don't know enough to know how to address it, other than I really think that the overpopulation of deer creates problems that go beyond the understory, eating away the understory of the natural area. So I just wanted to say there's plenty of reasons why I think we should try to.
I don't want, and I started the conversation, I don't want it to go totally off track here. I agree with you. I think we should come back to it another time, because I do think we need to address it. I agree.
Can I add something to this bullet? I would actually take it a little bit step further, because I don't think you're giving you and your team enough credit, right? You've established the relationship already with Monmouth County Parks. I highly encourage to continue to foster that relationship. And even if they point you to other resources and people, you might be far more effective given how much quicker you can move. So totally understand the request to us to work with Monmouth County Parks. You've already developed the inroads, you're already developing the relationships. And as we determine together what the partnership continues to look like throughout the year, foster that, right? Take it to the next level, have more meetings, right? Meet more people, understand more solutions, right? I don't think they're gonna approve a hunt in Fairhaven Fields, right, to come out with bows or shotguns, but nonetheless, it's not about that. It's about the other solutions that it potentially opens to educate us. Just wanted to add that.
And I'll just add one other thing, which is, this topic has come up once or twice, conservatively speaking, at the Environmental Commission. And I know that there's a roundtable coming up, and I would suggest that you bring the topic up there. I assume you'll be in attendance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then perhaps, as the liaison and all that, I can bring forward that discussion.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's obviously a complicated issue and thorny, so I think the more partnership on it, the more effective we can all be.
100%.
Carolyn,
Yeah.
when, one of the suggestions or one of the ways that the county is attempting to control the deer population is through a hunt, which obviously would not be possible in Fairhaven Fields, but do they have any other suggestions as to how we might be able to control the population?
They do have some of it involves hiring people to come in and professionals to come in and hunt.
Is there grant
Oh.
money? Are there programs? Is there eligibility requirements for a
We'll
town?
get into
I
that.
don't know.
Okay.
We have to look, but one of the things when they bring in the professional, everything that they harvest is then taken to a food bank. So it becomes a full cycle instead of just,
Understood.
so. Yeah, that's a good- They talked to us about birth control, but it doesn't work. So we've read about a lot of different options and most of them don't work.
Understood.
Most people don't want to talk about.
And then our last request is just to help our committee be connected and aligned with the borough. As I said before, organizationally, we report to the Borough Council. This has a few parts. One is if you could clarify how our committee is to report regular status to and get direction from the Borough Council. We suggest that the Borough Council agenda could include an item for a workshop discussion with our committee every 3 months for this purpose. Also, we'd like to understand the missions of all the borough committees so that we may work together effectively when our missions overlap. For example, tree safety in the natural area, like presumably that's owned by the Shade Tree Commission. And preservation of the Fairhaven Road, Cherry Tree Road row, that's going to require the collaboration of multiple committees. So if we could just clearly understand like what the mission of each committee is, so that we can work together most effectively, that would be helpful. And then our last request is just for a little tiny bit of administrative support. Our committee coordinates 500 to 900 hours of volunteer time a year to complete a variety of projects. We feel like we've completed quite a few projects this year. We request that the borough fund 2 hours a month, which is 24 hours a year of borough employee administrative time to help us work effectively. Problems or reasons we kind of ask for this. When a committee includes a borough employee, for example, DJ works on the rec committee, that committee has the ability for the employee to file work orders on behalf of the committee. A committee like ours that doesn't have a borough employee, we have no way to file a work order. So sometimes the DPW is asking us to file work orders to do stuff that we agree on, but we're kind of stuck. We're not able to do that. So, that's one thing we think this tiny bit of administrative support could help us with. And then also it's difficult for us to successfully execute some of the borough procedures because we don't use them enough to ever get good at them. And an employee who knew these procedures and lived with them every day could really guide us and really help this go a lot more smoothly. This becomes something that becomes unpleasant for our volunteers, that we don't know necessarily how to do things right and we get, criticized for it. So just a little bit of guidance to help smooth this over and help us work effectively. You can see we put a lot of passion and effort in, and we would just like to get that directed in a very effective way. And tasks that we think could be done in this 2 hours include things like arranging meeting logistics, sending out meeting invites, filing work orders for the committee, posting agendas and notes that we would provide, and helping to shepherd our purchases through the borough processes. And then just in conclusion, I want to say thank you to the members of the Natural Area Committee. 2022 was a bit of a breakthrough year for us. Things that we had discussed for many years kind of finally came to fruition after kind of butting our heads against the wall, not being sure how to make something happen. We finally had some success. The members are super thoughtful, super hardworking. Not only do they do a wide variety of project work, but on any given day, you can go out in the natural area and find one or more of our committee members doing physical labor out there. Their level of concern and care for the natural area and for Fairhaven in general is really high. And I have the utmost respect for these people. And we want to say thank you to the Borough Council for your consideration of our report. Our committee looks forward to continuing our fruitful partnership with you to support the natural area during 2022.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carolyn.
Great job.
Just
Any
a couple more
questions?
thoughts if I may.
Sure.
So well done, Carolyn, Dick, Dave, Mark, Paul, everybody else. I'm really impressed and success breeds success, and I think the breakthrough is the right word. And I think you have a lot of foundational components here that you'll be able to kind of grow on and iterate. Two different things I'll just have you take away with.
Great.
For the northwest section restoration, I would really think through lead times. So if the expectation is come to a plan in March to restore the northwest section, well, when ideally is the best time to restore? What time, what does that look like? Is it beneficial maybe to ask for an agenda item maybe at the next council meeting, just to digest some things? So just really think through that, because I know timing is really important when it comes to natural area. So just take that away.
Yep.
The other thing that I would kindly ask is I would think through a little bit more with any administrative help you're asking. So I just did quickly rough numbers. So 900 hours a year, 17 hours a week. And 24 hours a year in administrative support is a half-hour week to support that. So I don't know necessarily if a half-hour week of admin support will support 17 hours of volunteer time. Again, it's a swag estimate, but I just kindly request to think through some other potential solutions, right? Is there a threshold of a project where we just want support for that and the volunteers can focus elsewhere, really capturing potential solutions there? Other than that, I thought it was well done. I just wanted to share some feedback.
Great.
Thanks.
I thought it was excellent. Thank you, Carolyn. That was a lot of work.
Thank you for your report.
You're welcome.
I just had a quick question. That was super helpful. Thank you. Very comprehensive. I guess just a clarifying question. Is it true that you can only file a work order through a borough employee, or is that something like a liaison in one of these committees could potentially help with?
Oh, I know Dave Carl does attend a lot of your meetings, and you know, he's the foreman for parks.
Okay.
So I mean, I don't think it's a difficult process. I mean, they're doing the work, they cleared that area, so they are doing the trails, the work's getting done. So, you know, whether they write it out in the work order, he does, you know, I have to speak to Dave directly on how it gets, you know, and I don't, not to put Rich on the spot, but,
Sure.
you know, I don't see that that's an issue.
I just didn't know if that was a practical process for all committees, but okay, it's helpful. Thank you.
And I'll just add one thing on that. Procedurally, in terms of timing, which Councilman LaBarbera talked about, when you present a plan, come with your complete thoughts and also the expenditures that you have in mind. I know that most of those dollars are part of the from the appeal and don't necessarily require council approval. However, it may be in your interest to facilitate the implementation of the plan, assuming the council is in support of it, to have both of those pieces of information at the same time. And then with regarding your observations about coordination, I share that and give it a great deal of thought. And it was discussed at the last outreach communications committee meeting. We'll continue to do so. We're looking for ways to improve that. And I would suggest that the environmental or roundtable might be, it's still new, but it holds a great deal of promise and could be sort of a clearinghouse for that kind of collaboration. But we'll observe together and share thoughts on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Great job.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving along, street opening request from New Jersey Natural Gas. 55 Foreman Street, 90 Maple Avenue, 39 de Normandy, 239 Hants Road. Does anyone have anything they want to discuss here? No. Do I have a motion? Motion approved. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Next up is public comment on agenda items. This is for agenda items only. Please stand and identify yourself by clearly stating your name and address for the record. Please try to observe a time limit of 3 minutes. Is there anyone in the public on agenda items only?
245 Cambridge Avenue. I know you said you didn't want to hear about you again, but I think the other bad area is the Harding Bird Sanctuary. I actually hit it here on Ridge Road. It hit me, I think, and it happened at the time when the Red Bank High School was coming out. It wasn't dusk or dawn, it was middle of the afternoon. So it's impossible to swerve to get out of the way because there's so many people walking. And even some signage on Ridge Road to warn people who are not, now I remind myself every time that they tend to leave the bird sanctuary and walk across to that little triangle on the curved part of Harding Road and into the school property. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else in the public have a comment on agenda items? Yes.
I'm here primarily as a resident, but with a little bit of experience.
Dick, just your address. Sorry, sorry,
I'm sorry.
that's sorry.
36 Elmwood Lane, Fairhaven.
Yeah, if you just come close so that the folks on the owl.
You can take a seat here.
No, I can't hear you very well. I understand fully. Yeah, I'm here as a resident and also as a long time interested person in the natural area. And I think this is a great opportunity to discuss the problem of the long time problem of Fairhaven and maintenance. Because the natural area and deer and the community are an example of neglect of a job when it was maintenance and it's now restoration. Let's see, I wrote this all out and it'll be very quick if I read. Thank you. It's 18 fonts, so it's the borough has known about the natural area understory construction for 9 months now. A healthy understory is a key ingredient of the small wilderness that the natural area was. You could not see through it to see houses, nor could you hear road noise through it. You could feel like you were in a wilderness, even if you knew you were next to a large unnatural area. Now the natural area has a see-through, hear-through. It is a see-through, hear-through area. Fairhaven has lost its wilderness until the deer are managed and the understory is restored. Let me end by stating the obvious. A growing deer population will extend damage out into the community. The natural area food source is maxed out. The deer are being forced into the community. We're already seeing them in their yards. And I also want to make it clear, and I think that the discussions on deer should always include something that gives a full rounded picture of what deer management should be and could be, and how it really could improve the community and keep the deer. Anyway, understand I'm talking about right sizing the deer herd so that it can thrive within the sustainable food source. In other words, I don't think anybody wants to or should realistically plan to get rid of the deer. That's, in the current state of things, that's just not a reasonable thing to do. On the other hand, the right size deer population just adds another animal. Very beautiful, very attractive, and very popular animal. It's got to be the right size, and that's where you guys are really going to have to make some, I think, hard decisions. And I think you try to make them earlier rather than later. Because right now, we're not able to enjoy a natural area that we should be able to enjoy. And I don't know that it's getting more expensive to restore, because I don't know whether it could get more expensive to restore. They've eaten everything. Just to give you a feeling for how difficult Carolyn's decisions sometimes are, she mentioned the 2 non-natives that the county said were a good idea to save because they're not very invasive. We've only got 3 understory trees now that are effective. 2 are non-native, and we have American holly. The American holly, thank goodness, is the biggest player, but that's the only understory we have. Walk through it today. So the decision is the non-natives are not highly restored, are not highly invasive, and they keep they're a portion of the understory forest. So you've got to balance off these things. And those are decisions that these folks have to go through all the time. And they spend a lot of time, and I know you appreciate it.
Dick, I take it you're gonna share the same feedback with the environmental committee when they discuss it at the next meeting?
I think that would be helpful. It's on the 8th of February. However, and I'll speak to the chairman, the deer management is not currently on the agenda, but I'm certain they would consider it important and worthwhile.
Right.
Can
No,
I,
I think it's. yeah,
may I make a request if you're gonna attend that, given your extensive experience? From what I've read, and it's limited, successful deer population control requires coordination at local, county, and state level, right? And there are certain evolutionary tendencies of deer that is quite difficult to overcome, given that they've been here much longer than we have. So what would be extremely helpful is what other towns have done within the confines of their authority to combat and have an impact, irrespective of coordination with Monmouth County Park or New Jersey State. So I just, as a takeaway, that would be extremely helpful and kind of give us a best practice of how other towns have addressed the issue.
Well, I appreciate that the fact that the Natural Area Advisory Committee is bringing these issues forward. These issues are also relevant for the bird sanctuary, for the 3rd Street Trail area, for any natural wooded area that wraps around our baseball fields. The 4th Creek, I think that is a want to be conservation corridor. These are all these splendid natural amenities that we're responsible for. They need stewardship. Just like you've got guidance from the Monmouth County Park System, it seems to me we should also be considering whether we need an open space plan that addresses conservation management and maintenance plans for all of these open space areas. They don't manage themselves. So it's definitely a thought for down the road, but it seems to me it could certainly be part of our master plan when that gets underway.
I would just mention, I think we're just gonna add one thing. I just think geographically, if we want to really manage the deer, we need to be speaking with Rumson.
Yeah.
Because there's so much deer there. And I suspect if we manage them at Fairhaven Fields, they're gonna keep coming. So I just think we need to be aware of the geography of where we are as a peninsula, and maybe that's the first town that I would imagine that maybe we should ought to, if we really want to think about managing it from our end, we should maybe approach their council and their environmental commission, speak with Kristen Hall, and see whether we can maybe think of a more of a coordinated effort at a minimum to find information on what the option might be on a joint basis. That would be my suggestion, because otherwise I don't think we'll be very effective if we're doing it on our own.
Let me share one thing from the person in charge of the directors Arboretum. And he visited and we went back to the house and chatted. And he said, don't expect to find expertise that can tell you what to do, because you've got something that's different than anyone else has. He said, be sure and train people. Be sure and put people in a position where they learn, because you're going to have to depend on it. And that, I think, is a great insight to what you've got. You were fantastically lucky. We were fantastically lucky to get that place. It was a bunch of crazy things and fantastic people, and it happened. But you can't count on that sort of thing, but you can, with the natural area, train people, because so many decisions or so many preparations for decision have to be made by people who know the area, who know what plants are where, know what habitat is. So I can hear you. There are experts and there are more experts, but do you know a deer as invasive expert? There must be, but I don't know where to find one. In other words, the deer are the worst invasives that we have. That's what they are. But there are plant invasive people and there are animal, and I don't know where you find animal.
I mean, the suggestion not to keep going into it, but the hunt that they did at Hartshorn, I would start there and identify who the primary point of contact was there and work backwards.
Right, well, that's the county.
I know, but like, again, leveraging that relationship to help inform what we do locally,
Sure.
right? That'd be a starting point. I would
No.
suggest.
Yes, I think we've got a fairly good feeling for what the county has, and it's sort of what you'd expect. And you've got a tougher job in many respects than Hartshorn because you're closer to a lot more people.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
Anyone else in the public have any public comment on agenda items only? Agenda items only. Allison, is there anyone on Zoom?
No.
No one with their hand up? Thank you. Moving along, approval of minutes, January 23rd, 2023 regular meeting, January 23rd, 2023 executive session. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Second,
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Polley,
Yes.
Koch,
yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
January 30th, 2023 special meeting. Councilman Cole, you will not vote on this. Okay, anyone have a motion?
Motion.
Second,
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Polley,
Yes.
Koch,
yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Great, moving along, old business. I'm sure you're all ready for a facilities presentation by councilperson, Councilman LaBarbera.
Let's do it. All right. Once Allison confirms she's sharing, if we could just get a quick thumbs up that folks are seeing it. If anybody in the public is texting anybody that's watching, but it'd be good to know that it's up there. Sharing. Okay. All right, so let's go to, it's not as lengthy. I tried to make it a little more condensed for tonight's meeting. So if we go to slide 2. Let's start with DPW. So if the governing body and the public recall, last week assessed and agreed to move forward with the renovation, given the structural assessment. There were 4 key takeaways. The roof consultant was identified and selected. This is really critical, so we can move forward with getting the roof replaced. And I'll outline the sequence with what it looks like. Site visits forthcoming that Rich is working on. And once this site visit and this initial consultation is complete, we can send out to bid and then authorize. All of these have standard lead times. And as we've discussed, it includes the Borough Hall lower roof as well. On the LSRP side of the house, remember these are the 5 AOCs that exist at DPW. Now that we know we're remediating, now that we know no matter what, no later than July 2025, all 5 have to be remediated. CME is going to come on site. So working with Rich on that as well. Fuel tank replacement, we're continuing to evaluate. We received all the input from the towns who just completed this. It's likely assessed if we go out to bid, it'll result in a lower price. The caveat here is that would require design and bid specs. Architect side of the house, we had 12 architects that we identified. An initial review and recommendation process from different resources, ultimately culled the list down to 6. And we've been working to put together an initial email to these 6 entities with some key questions to see if we can get to a quote unquote short list. And then once we have our short list, then we can follow our process to go out and start working with the architect. So high level updates on all 4 progressing. If we all recall, to life and safety risks, roof, we're moving as quick as we can, bifurcating that from the actual renovation itself and working these couple other components. Next slide. So when we look at kind of proposed next and steps, again, these are just, you know, swags that we target as new information comes. This is an evolving process, but you'll kind of see some of the next steps that we already talked about. Separated out the roof milestones from the actual renovation milestones, just to provide an understanding and overview. So DPW, Rich, anything on your end, or does that cover it?
Covers it.
Awesome. All right, let's get into PD. Again, I'll continue to say at every meeting, many thanks to multiple folks, and the pace at which we're going. We're almost finding our stride, probably another 4 weeks we'll find our stride. So on the planning board side of the house, we're gonna look to brief the planning board on 22 Feb. 21. Sorry, I keep going back and forth on that. 21 Feb. Confirmed with Eli, we'll have all the necessary drawings, can then brief them and get the blessing from them. And these are in no particular order, it's just in the sequence of my emails in my inbox, so bear with me. Gable Associates, we had our kickoff call last week, which went really great. They are going to be coming on site this Thursday. Chief will be accompanying them. We'll be providing a follow-up. They confirmed, if you guys recall, last week, I can't remember, we wanted the PD, the community center, which is technically one building right now. We wanted Borough Hall, and then we wanted the concession stand at the fields. No problem, no change, no nothing. They'll just add it into their sites. That's really great news. Teresa's also working to get a myriad of information to them to inform the feasibility assessment. I'm going to come back to fire suppression. Redesigned initial aesthetic inquiry. So we had our kickoff call with Eli. If the team remembers, we baked into this design phase meetings every 2 weeks. It's actually evolving into that a little bit more. It's really meeting weekly. There's going to be initial discussion on some feedback we provided. I'll show that in a minute. There were some questions as well from Eli on photographs. If you recall in the last meeting, there were a series of photographs, I think 12, to help inform the residential friendliness. Again, I'm going to continue to articulate it, so it's no surprise, and it's kind of stored in long-term memory. When you talk about aesthetic design, there's always increased costs. Colts Neck PD spent $300 grand to make their building not more residentially friendly, but fit into the not topography, the historic character of the area it was. The building was stood up. So just again, keep that in mind. Open house. Pending discussion today, we're going to target 16 Feb for the open house discussion. This is 3D renderings. This is discussion. If the governing body assesses and there's more than 4 of us that participate in that, that will likely, not likely, that will have to be a special meeting because there will be discussion based. I really want to call out something and many thanks to Tracy for her help on this. There's a preferred sequence, not preferred, best practice sequence where you funnel discussions, right? Starting with the community, right? Not letting the community be the last stop. So yes, there's a pace that we have. Yes, we're targeting certain dates, right? But that doesn't mean we're going to circumvent process, circumvent what we're doing. So that's why you'll notice that open house is first, then the planning board. Project plan is in draft. I will send that to Teresa and then have her share it out to the entire governing body. It's going to be a draft, but it's just a way to track all the milestones. I'm hoping that when the contractor comes on board and there's a PM associated with the project, they can kind of hand off the project plan. But for now, we need something. BFI Furniture, this was the state contract vendor from Colts Neck. If folks recall the discussion last week, she was kind enough to take a phone call when she was on vacation of the weekend. She's back on Wednesday and we followed up with her. This is a really critical piece because as we design the building, we also need to understand the furniture components to it. Not that the furniture component will drive the design, but it might provide just another perspective. Again, trying to hit as many of these current critical steps as we can. LSRP, we're waiting for CME to come on site. If the team remembers the underground storage tank, that's what we're looking to do. Chief's going to coordinate. Hopefully they come on site this week. Chief's also meeting with JCP&L this week for the temporary electric line. We're going to target March for the bond and financial council. We have some time here. Initial discussions state that the ordinances that were previously passed to fund PD, fund DPW are okay. But we're able to meet in March, like there'll be a finance committee discussion with the team that we met last week. Additional parking solution. We've talked about the potential partnership with the church next door to PD. And if there's some type of mutual arrangement that could be established to enhance parking around that area. Chief, I feel like I'm saying Chief a lot today, Chief. Chief is identifying a point of contact for us to begin that discussion. So hopefully in the next several weeks. We're waiting on an assessment on the historical significance of the PD site. You'll notice Councilman Rodriguez in here, I put in parentheses, not landmark status, just because we called that out last time. But once we have that historical assessment, that will really help provide some granularity to what we're going to do. Landscape, we're going to be introduced to the landscape architect from TGP. We also have a potential landscape architect in town that's willing to provide some pro bono perspective, I'll call it. And then many thanks to Councilman Hoey today for getting the list of natives that was passed to TGP today as well to inform the decision. Do you want to give a quick update on the trees?
We had a good conversation this afternoon. We just walked through the parking lot to take a look at the trees. As of right now, we feel confident the trees that are on the west side of the parking lot can be sustained. If we do go with solar panel roof, we might want to trim some back just to make sure the solar panels are not affected, but more to come.
Awesome. This might be a great opportunity to pair up with some other groups in town. So I'd like to come back to fire suppression because there is a decision point required here. So if you recall the 30 January meeting, there were really 3 do-outs. Talk to the fire marshal, talk to the fire chief, and can we somehow have a gut check of the cost? So I'm gonna go through all 3. In my discussion, and it was literally in that sequence that it was completed. So we got in touch with the fire marshal, Paul, I can't remember his last name, thank you, who really unequivocally was for fire suppression. He provided some good, what's the word? Not level setting, but just some good detail. And in regards to that, fire suppression, separate from the life aspects, right, which I think are given. These buildings are 24/7, which means people aren't in there. That's why fire suppression is another advantageous aspect. So if somebody's not there and fire breaks out, the fire suppression does its job long enough to allow first responders to get to the site. I want to say that again because it's really, really important, right? If you had a fire in an area that had fire suppression, the fire is still going to do some damage, but the suppression does exactly that, suppresses the fire until the first responders can come in and put it out. He talked about how in Sayreville, they redid their first aid building and then a year later burned out. Wasn't manned 24/7, didn't have fire suppression. And whatever reason, the decision not to put it in there, he was articulating how this is more common, I'm not gonna say frequent, but more common than we believe. He recommended we reach out to see if there was any insurance savings. There's nothing realizable up front. It has to do with, Teresa, help me out here, with if there was an issue and how they spread the risk out, that it comes in on the back end, really.
It really has to do with your experience rating. In other words, if we did have a total loss of a building, it's going to impact your premiums going forward, rather as opposed to a discount up front putting in fire suppression.
But it was worth running the ground from a GIF perspective, all that, and just to get educated. We did then, so the conversation with Paul then ended. Then immediately after that call, it was last Tuesday, I spoke with Chief Brister. Chief Brister did qualify that he does not have the expertise of the fire marshal, so I appreciate that. But as an experience, he agreed with Paul, articulating the benefits of fire suppression and that it should be considered. The conversation then went to the gut check on the cost. We had Eli's estimate for fire suppression, which was $80K. I've received another estimate at $5 per square. So if you look at the combination of community center DPW, the current value now is 7,800 square. So let's call it 8,000 times 5 is 40K. So 40 to 80,000, right, for the fire suppression. And without doing a formal proposal and going out, which we have certain protocols we have to follow, that's what we're with. The question that comes down to, though, and this was raised by everybody, is the water pressure enough? I've heard that American Water would do this. American Water then introduced us to a different POC to inform this. In my conversations with Paul, he articulated that American Water won't do that for you, that it's actually the contractor. So let's assume none of it happens. Let's do worst case scenario that the water pressure isn't sufficient. You're talking upwards of 100K for a water line. So more than double the cost. I'm not going to speculate whether or not we think the water pressure is good. That one single line would serve both PD and community center, we confirmed, but we're at a decision point. And it really boils down to, do we want fire suppression part of this? Are we willing to accept the financial increased risk should the water pump be required? Assuming your head 180K, worst case scenario, Eli's estimate is spot on. Again, that 48K range, and assume that we need that water pump, 100K is like worst case scenario. But that's the decision point.
Have we had the water test, the water pressure tested?
No,
New Jersey American Water is, gonna contact me this week. We made the initial inquiry.
Okay.
It went to one department, they picked it to another. They were kind enough to call today and said that the girl who's doing this was out, but that they would reach out to us.
Is there any percentage chance? Is there any thought as to usually when they test this, 70% of the time, you don't need the water pump, nothing?
I don't know.
No feedback?
Rich might have some thoughts on that. I
Rich
don't
has the
think we
water
have a
pressure
water
over
pressure
DPW.
issue in town. But I think it would depend on, the actual water main that runs in front of that building.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe one way to think about it is, it's 180,000. It's a significant number. How much do we think the renovation is gonna be? 6 million.
yeah, I was gonna say
So,
4 to 6 million.
can I just make it up? I'm just making up 6 million. It's 180,000 relative to 6 million. Maybe it's worthwhile making that investment to make sure that we have that extra layer of safety, both for the kids who might be, in the youth center, as well as the police. That's just my perspective. It just doesn't seem as a percentage of the total to be that much that we could not go that extra mile.
Drew, are you including all three structures, DPW?
Not DPW, PD Community Center. I haven't, DPW does not include the 100, because the water pump would have to be at the DPW location, right? If it was needed at DPW, not talking about that. All I'm talking about is the two structures at 35 Fisk. New PD, 6,140 square feet, down from 8,700 square feet. We'll get to that in a second. And then the community center, which has a base pad of 1,800 square feet, give or take. So.
So I should be asking the chief how the water pressure is at the police department, is what you're telling me.
Water pressure is fine.
Mhm.
We had President Eli today, our professional opinion is that since it's a one-story building, that there's
It'll be enough.
sufficient water
Yeah.
pressure, but he's not guaranteeing.
Not a 3-story.
Not guaranteeing it, but I think if we don't need a water pump, it's a total no-brainer,
absolutely,
correct?
absolutely.
So when do we find out? When will we find out? Next week, you said?
I don't know.
Sure.
They only called today. I only sent an email.
Do we need this information right now? Or
Well-
wait for one more meeting.
If the government agrees next Thursday to have the open house and have a discussion, that will buy us enough time where maybe we can get in touch and figure out some of those statistics. But if we don't have that meeting next Thursday, I'm trying to avoid any redesign costs, right? And so Eli hasn't come to us yet and said, hey, I need to know yes or no. We're trying to be extremely proactive here. So if everybody wants us to wait another week, 10 days, and see if we can get in touch with Margaret at American Water to see what she tells us. I'm okay with that. We have time, but I just want to put it on our radar.
We had an incident at the fields in the last year where the outer roof was on fire based on vandalism. I don't know how we could not.
I am comfortable with the $180,000 worst case scenario to ensure that these buildings are protected, should be there fire. It's a 40-year investment.
Yeah.
Right, we're spending 180 grand for 40-year investment, right? We know kids are in those buildings. We know the community center is 400 times a year, right? Our PD, right? People are going in and out 24/7, even though it's not manned 24/7. To me, it's a no-brainer. That's how I feel.
I'm
about
I'm
it.
on the same.
Is there an annual expense as well?
Yes, there's an annual maintenance expense. Paul told me $1,000 a year for maintenance. Oh, don't.
Residential neighborhood with a complicated building.
Right. PD's gonna be next to the house at 29th, Fisk, whatever that building.
It's really not.
Draw it up.
Perfect. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, so we'll provide that guidance. That takes care of that. Okay, cool. Thank you. Next slide. I have a handful of more slides. So we went back and don't worry about this. I'm gonna blow it up on the next slide, but I just want to hit some key points. If the governing body and the public calls, right? We talked about option E, we talked about reduction in square footage, right? We talked about the significance of a community center. So this, I'm calling it a site plan, I don't even know if that's accurate, right? Just some draft plan that Eli put down. If you recall, the snapshot was literally like a drawing on paper, so this is what the outcome of that was. 4 main components I want to hit here, and then I'm gonna go to the next slide. We're down to 6,140 square feet. It's 2,700. I'll give it 2,600. I'll be underestimated. 2,600 square feet less. So job well done, right? Check that box, which I think is a significant box. Everything you've seen here, everything that you've seen here, and we'll look on the next slide, is aligned with the Department of Corrections, State Statute, Chapter 34, Department of Justice, best practices, the IACP. Remember, there was 170 countries, 32,000 members, right? The leading effort of police stations and other aspects of policing. And then the program requirements that were reviewed back in 2009, January. This was also informed by the Colts Neck PD walkthrough. The Colts Neck PD walkthrough really provided the visual aspects to see, well, what is the purpose of a conference room? What is the purpose of a training room? What is the purpose of the record room, right? And their first lieutenant, if I'm recalling correctly, chief, their borough administrator, Kathleen, we're all providing that feedback in here. We're gonna be meeting with them hopefully in the next week to gut check this. The other aspect that I think was fantastic, and Eli has this really sharp new architect working with him. And we harped on the residential aspects of the PD. And if you notice here, we're calling this 3 separate volumes. So if you look at the left-hand side, where the locker rooms are, conference room, key components, the middle really where the offices are, and on the right side really where the cells are. One that's done by design, number one. But number two, having these 3 separate volumes, and maybe I should have put the original like plot plan. When you compare this footprint to the house on the left hand, if I'm looking at PD, the house to the right, and then the church, it fits within all the structures really, really nicely. It doesn't stand out. It's not like a giant rectangle. Can you go to the next slide real quick? So this is a little bit bigger. And maybe we can send this out to everybody. It literally got hot off the press maybe an hour before the meeting. So there's a couple things if I may stand up, right? So a lot of the feedback that came back from Colts Neck PD was functionality, like walking through and making sure that it was functional. So Chief and I literally were standing and walking in his office, right? But when you look at the functionality, this is the front, there's a porch, and this is the front of the building. Imagine like the flagpole out here, right? All of that. And then when you come in, you have the lobby, obviously, and then this is where the clerk will be. You'll notice the size of this that was done by design as the borough pursues more CCTV. Remember, we talked about closed circuit television, not only the schools, but adding it to the concession stands. You need the space for that, right? If you have 3, 4 monitors like this, it takes up a lot of room. Copy room, break room, office, the bathroom, which is really critical. This entire area right here, right, is where the Sally port is. We talked about the safety issue, right, of a suspect being detained and now coming to Sally port. You know, you need to have patrol here so that God forbid there's an issue, that the folks in this room can come in to aid if there's something there. The garage, if you remember, we took police storage and or OEM, depending on how you look at it, is now here. This is designed so that the 2 commercial container boxes at DPW right now, where there's PD equipment is stored, all comes out because those all go away. Those 5 container boxes are going away. And that's what's here. There was some really detail spent to storage and how you can maximize the space, right? So we told Eli, shrink the space, but then maximize the space. Right, all the offices. Over here, conference and training room. We went back and forth on this. Can you combine it? Can you not? And Colts Neck really shed a lot of light on this. And he talked about how many state mandated trainings there are for the police. Not to mention what other, and Chief, help me out here, not what other mandated trainings come in because we're part of the active shooter cadre, right? Or because we are part of SWAT, or because we're part of the other state initiatives that we do, right? If you recall back on January 9th, we talked about those additional duties, right, that Chief has fostered in the culture. And then when you look at the conference room, it just makes sense. And especially when we looked at that the real challenge here was ensuring scalability, right? Not just building for today, but building for tomorrow, but doing it reasonably. Obviously ADA compliant locker rooms, right? We don't have a female locker room right now, which you need to. The ADA compliance in here, if you guys recall, when we were talking about the 5,000 square foot, we asked, hey, what would the PD be as of today with ADA compliance? And the comment was 6,000 square feet. So we came in 140 over. Mechanical room, which has to be this size, and then you get into all the other aspects. Evidence, gun cleaning, server room, which you have to have, janitor closet, and then a door here and a door here and two garages here. So just to kind of articulate functionality, all the different components, and what we made sure Eli was extremely clear on was that all of these rooms, not only do we want them to be the Class B standard or the industrial use standard, but that there's no sense in trying to be wedded to a certain size footprint just because we want a certain size footprint. And so we just told him, hey, this is what we kind of come in at. He came in at 6,650, if everybody recalls correctly, and he was able to take another 510 square off, right? So, and then 560 a square, it's another $250,000 in savings just for the building itself, right? So just give you guys some feedback and whatnot.
And there's some other, like some of these storage with the cage stuff. We're a accredited department, a lot of stuff requires you to have certain storage, certain things, temporary storage. So there's a lot of stuff in here, like we added in today, actually, this is added in today. A prep room, what that is we have tasers, we have body-worn cameras, and all that stuff has to be secure. So that's why we put a room by itself, just for that. I can't put that anywhere else where it has. So again, in training, we have now state just mandated self-defense training for all these officers. That was, they did it, they never mandated. That's a new mandate 3 times a year. We have to have that. We have taser training twice a year. We have a lot of stuff going on. And every day, the AG is adding more and more. Awesome. And one more thing. Also, you remember the PD does OEM, right?
Right.
So we're trying first management. So that's why it's important to have a conference room, because if anything ever happens, like during Sandy, our police headquarters became the focal point of the whole world.
And a lot of this space is multi-purpose, right? So police, OEM, state requirements, right? I mean, it's just, there was a lot of thought and kudos to Chief to, one, identifying the program requirements, right, that we articulated, but then really ensuring that the right information was passed to Eli, and really the Goldstein partnership, because it wasn't just Eli, to produce this first draft. I'm going to come back to this. This is not final, and I want to talk about sequencing, but this is just step one. Go to the next slide. I'm going to heavily caveat this slide. This is a pure swag in its finest, right? Eli was just working on the plan. I'm going to work backwards from my 4 bullets here. There, if you recall, on January 9th, we had PD program requirements put together, right? Every building you have to map back to program requirements. And PD was Department of Corrections, Department of Justice, what our PD requirement was, IECP. What we are looking to do, and what we've already started, is to refine the program requirements of the community center to ultimately inform what this looks like. So when I say swag, when I say this is not even probably considered a draft, right? I just want to make sure that that's properly categorized and qualified. Total square footage is around 1,870. Restrooms were put on the east side. That was to ensure windows and whatnot. Whether they end up there, again, all this is up in the air. Lobby and west egress, you have to have a lobby, you have to have west egress. That's just standard based on what type of building structure this is. And again, that last bullet there, we're already having the meetings. And so just wanted to articulate that.
One word before you leave,
Yeah.
if I may.
Please.
In the same way a PD components of a PD would be driven by Department of Corrections and so on, like you pointed out, a community center and the program requirements for that would be driven by the community.
Yep.
And I just wanted to pause and say that I believe at this point, there are some meetings that are going to be, the public is going to be invited to. That kind of input is going to come directly from the local residents. This is going to be a place that's shared by the community, and the community will be part of programming it and informing the design ultimately.
Yeah, spot on. And it goes back to that that onion model, right? You start with community first, then you boil it, right? And it can't, I mean, this is just where it's really even more true, more apparent, more needed, more required, right? Because the community uses this 300 to 400 times a year, right? So whether we meet with our planner that we're doing, or we meet with DJ, right, to talk through the process, right? And meet with the residents to solicit feedback. It's all these different perspectives that are gonna boil down from a community perspective. Then we'll go to planning board, right? And then we'll ultimately come back here. But by that point, by the time it comes back to us, the conversations have been ongoing. The discussions have been ongoing in their appropriate legal manner, right? So it's just really, really critical to call out. Okay, next slide, almost done. I just continue to put this in here. I'm gonna kind of go through pretty quickly, but I always put the schedule. Kudos to everyone, because we wanted to target February 2023 to initiate the redesign. It was initiated 03 Feb. So we're so far on a good track. The one thing I'll call out here is after we go through the redesign, we bid, finalizing the overall costs, and that's every aspect, right? That's why we talked about fire suppression. Next slide, most important slide. Okay, so for the consideration, this is the schedule, right? The way we've been operating is to provide all the information and then come together as a team. So we look at the design steps, and I'm hoping I'm using the correct word, just calling it design. We made the decision point today on fire suppression, so I think that's great. Thursday on the 9th, Gable Associates come on site. Remember what we articulated. The feasibility study is critical, right? If solar makes sense, great. It makes sense for us to buy it. It makes sense for us to have a third party. The feasibility assessment will inform all of that. And Gable will be providing that to us, to the governing body to make a decision. Starting Friday, we'll begin those community center requirements. We'll formalize them. Start 16 February. If we're all in agreement, we'll have that open house night. 17 February, that's when I would like the feasibility assessment. If I can get it on 16 February, I will. By that point, we should know whether or not solar makes sense or not. Again, governing body decision though to move forward. No ifs, ands, or buts. 22 Feb, did I mess up the date again? 21 Feb, I was trying to get an extra day, I guess. 21 Feb, brief the planning board. So Greg, I don't know if we can circle up on like the requirements of briefing the planning board in a situation like this, just from what the requirement is.
Get on the agenda.
Yeah, get on the agenda, but just talk through what they're expecting. That'd be really helpful for an education for me. 25 Feb, I put a tentative second open house here. I like this because is it extra? Yes. However, given the pace, given our discussions, given everything that's going on, I think having a second open house really would be worthwhile. It also allows us after the planning board, but again, that's ultimately comes down to us. And then 27 Feb is our town council meeting, our next town council meeting that's on the books. So thought process is onion model, right? Community engagement, community feedback, community requirements, check, check, check. Come into the planning board, go through the requirements for the planning board and brief them, 3D renderings, right? The same kind of aspects. Feedback, right? And then keep going in. So by the time we come back to the town council meeting on the 27th, it's pretty much a fully baked plan at that point. And on the 27th, if all goes according to plan, there are curveballs. If things need to shift because a new data point comes up, that all goes without saying. But if we maintain this on 27th Feb, we come in, we all agree with the PD, the community center design phase done. And then on Tuesday, Eli gets his guidance to shift towards, I think schematics would be the next phase.
Design. But we're in planning and design mode, then he'll go to design.
Yeah, exactly. Where he'll like roll through that second month of work. So that is facilities.
Just to be clear on the presentation to the planning board, there is a requirement for a courtesy presentation, and usually the architect does it. I don't know if, I thought you were gonna do that 2 phases. You were gonna just give them kind of a, a heads up and then do the official one at their March meeting, but, I don't know if you can roll the whole thing into 21 Feb or not.
So
Can I offer some
Yeah.
thoughts on this? There may be 2 potential presentations with the planning board. What I am seeing here is a chance to go out to the community generally. So to the public on the 16th, to the planning board on the 16th and back with the public on the 25th before council. At all three of those meetings, there are opportunities for the community to review the same materials.
Correct.
So it's the things that we know we've discussed,
Mhm.
the schematic things, the maps and it doesn't, I don't see it as a formal presentation of a final plan. I see it as another opportunity to engage the public, especially a land use board that might have a kind of eye for this, but really it's a third opportunity for another part of the community to speak to the same materials that will be reviewed at the open house on
What-
16th and 25th.
What, the planning board, I understand, what's the two, why are there two other ones?
Well, the idea is, one is on a weeknight for a couple of hours on a weeknight. The 25th is a Saturday. There are some people who would love to be part of this and love to have a chance to say, I really like the community center have AV equipment, but may not be able to get there on Thursday night, but could come on Saturday. So that's the reason that there are two in here. And if it's the same materials, it's a matter of setting up the same materials. I think the delivery is low lift, a small lift, but the reward could be substantial.
You included the governing body in both for a meeting?
The
That's
16th,
up to
I
the,
think goes without saying. I think it should. If it's the 25th, I defer to us. I mean, the Saturday special council meeting. I don't know if that's standard, but I know I'll be at both.
I'll be there.
If we don't trigger into 4, the one thing I do want to come back with, the requirement on the planning board, the thought process was to articulate the amended approach. The previous approach was approved based on my understanding. So this would be an amended approach and see if the planning board says, hey, you're good, you don't need to come back. And if they do decide, we still have some extra time because Eli's request that before the project goes out to bid, have planning board done. So we're trying to introduce, Mayor, as many controls as possible to, one, prevent redesign, right? So we don't incur costs. 2, hit the community as many times as possible. And then 3, offer enough opportunity for discussion. So by the time we come to the 27th Feb, those 2 plans that we showed up there, it's like, yep, we've done, we're not changing, we're in, we're going. Obviously, something, grandiose comes up that cause a curveball or redesign, it is what it is, certain things we can't control, but that's the thought process, so.
I think if you want to finalize your design on the 27th, you would need to actually make your presentation to the planning board prior to that finalizing design.
And well, and the time the discussion was, if we go with the amended plan, right, and an amended approach, does that suffice, given that the plan was previously approved? Maybe it's worth the question, I don't know who the head of the planning board is.
Working on that.
Okay, maybe it's
Right now,
worth
Jim Newell is acting. chair.
maybe it's worth the discussion with Jim to see what he thinks, and we haven't spoken to him informally yet, so if you're okay with that, it'd be nice to talk to him.
I don't think it requires formal approval. This is am I wrong about that? I think that this is a community outreach. as a
Normally,
courtesy.
it's done through a capital review.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are time limitations, and the plans are typically put on file just as an application is done. And usually that plan is presented to the planning board, although it is courtesy in nature by the design professional that prepared the drawings. They actually go through the whole thing. I know we have conceptual floor plans, but as with the last prior meetings, they would want to see the building design as well, because to your point, they want to see the massing, they want to see the height, the setbacks,
Yeah.
the design, the architectural elements, things of that nature.
Copy that. I think the goal of 21 Feb is to have a level of confidence that the updated layout, that there's nothing that stands out to the planning board. So that when we come to that process, when we come to that, I'll call it I don't like using the word formal, but
I would call it more of an informal
when
discussion.
we come to that informal inflection point, that there's nothing unexpected.
Right.
And the ultimate goal is that we do it in such a manner that we avoid any possible redesign costs for bidding. So I think it's a little bit nuanced and unique in how we're approaching it. And Greg, if there's 45-day lead times and all that, we will follow it to a T. But the goal of 21 Feb is to provide an update to the amended plan and understand if there's anything of significance to require input, so that when it comes back on the 27th with those updates added, we won't expect any other significant changes from the planning board. Does that make sense? Okay.
So Feb 16, you're looking for a special meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Shade trees meeting that day.
Yep, understood.
Just, I'm sorry, for the formal processes for this, so the planning board, this is a municipal project, you're building a building.
Yes.
It's not actually subject to your zoning laws because it's on public property. But whenever your planning board's adopted a master plan, and so whenever that happens, the governing body having jurisdiction over the subject matter of this building, before taking action necessitating the expenditure of any public funds incidental to the location, character, extent of such project, shall refer the action involving such specific project to the planning board for review and recommendation in conjunction with the master plan, and shall not act thereon without such recommendation or until 45 days have elapsed after such reference without receiving such recommendation. Meaning that you have to refer the public project to them and wait at least 45 days or have the planning board give you the recommendations back faster than that. I mean, in terms of fitting it into here, is there a place like, Rich, there's a subcommittee that reviews? And I've worked with the land use subcommittee.
We have a,
Is there a play like
we have a technical review committee.
Okay,
We used it very effectively when school projects came forward. We were able to review those documents through that subcommittee before they came to that formal meeting, because just to get some insight and some discussion of what we're looking at doing before we have our design professionals, finalize a lot of these drawings.
So Drew, what I understand you were looking at is you're looking for like to give the planning board a preview so that you don't spend a bunch of money figuring it out the next time if they come back with the
That's
recommendations.
correct.
I think the best way to do that
Please.
is to meet with that technical review committee. You can even have it be a public meeting, invite people in the room, sit at this table, but that's the best way to do it informally without triggering all the requirements of municipal land use law with the 45. Because you're really going, if you follow that, you're going back twice to an official meeting. The way to streamline what you're looking to do is that's what the technical review committee is for.
Okay.
So what I would recommend is replacing that February 22 with a meeting with the planning board technical review committee, which doesn't have to be on notice or advertised, things like that. It's a committee of the planning board that are the more experienced, and I believe you're part of it, aren't you, Rich? Technical review, right? So that you get you get what you're looking for, but without triggering the official review.
So walk me through real quick, Greg, lead times, right? So does that mean then we trigger the 45 days for official review in March? You follow me, and then can ensure that the design and or specs, whatever's done at that point then is substantially complete drawings? Is that?
So when you file for the capital review for the planning board with what Rich said, they like to see the final designs, elevations, all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
When you file the full plans after you've done the final redesign, the 45 days to start from there.
That sets the clock.
Okay, that's super helpful. So then on 21 Feb, we can meet with the planning board,
Technical committee.
I think they
committee.
already have a meeting
They have
that
a meeting
night.
There's already a meeting that night, and I don't know if that technical review committee is still in existence. They may have to create a new one.
It's in existence by ordinance,
Right.
but the members have changed, so
Right.
the planning board would need to
Appoint new members.
appoint new volunteers for that
Yeah,
committee.
and that could be done at the meeting on the 21st.
Right, and then maybe next week you can meet with those people to meet what you're doing up there.
Okay,
And it would be like if you were trying to build a house in town, and you weren't quite sure about our zoning requirements, what you're gonna see before the board. It's exactly what that we provide that technical review committee,
Got
they don't, for exactly the concern you're talking about.
that's super helpful. And then once Eli, TGP comes back and says, hey, here's the substantial complete drawings, the elevations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He hands them to Teresa, that starts the 45-day clock. We can then go brief.
The 45-day clock, he goes to a planning board meeting and makes the presentation to them.
No,
Check.
we file it with them. So we file it with their secretary to be put on their agenda. They have
Yeah.
45 days from them, like, just like the referral, like we're
Got it.
ordinance from there.
Okay, That's perfect. So then
Even
even
if
if,
file with Teresa, you file it.
Yeah.
Teresa, we can all help you.
so let's say 28th Feb, he filed it, or we filed it on 28th Feb, that starts the 45-day clock.
On April 14th.
But in theory, we can meet in March at the planning board and they can meet and decide on that day, correct?
Yes, so it's 45 days or when they get back to you,
Home run.
whichever is lesser.
Home run, okay.
Yeah, it
Um,
doesn't have to be 45 days. It has to be, that's, if they don't respond to you in 45 days, it automatically goes through.
Yeah, no, understood. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that clicked for me.
The
Thank you.
mechanism is because if this, like, I don't know what the zoning is in this area. Let's just say that the setbacks aren't right here, it's a little bit different, there's more parking, there's not enough parking or something like that. None of those rules really apply here. So the planning board capital review, they don't apply here because it's municipal public property.
Mhm.
And so the planning, this capital review, section 31 of municipal land use law, is so that people who would normally get a notice in the mail or be aware of the meeting to show up and give their comment, that's their opportunity to do so. It's the public's due process, notwithstanding as the sovereign borough, you don't have official, you don't really have to actually follow your own rules.
Got it.
So at the 21st meeting, we should plan on looking for volunteers to serve on the technical review. So we can put that on the agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Awesome.
And
Awesome.
How
it'll take
many
you a while.
residents are on the technical review committee, Betsy?
Pardon me?
How many residents are on the technical?
I have no idea because I wasn't, it
Rich, do you
didn't,
know?
it wasn't active. when I-
Summarize the board members, it's maybe 3,
3 board members and yourself?
plus your, some of your board professionals,
Okay,
could be the attorney, the planner, the engineer.
oh, so it's heavy professional. Okay. And this would not, that committee meets outside of, it's not a public forum.
No,
It doesn't
Right.
have to be.
No, it isn't, it
Typically, it is
doesn't
not.
function as a public forum,
No.
right?
No.
So you'll get technical feedback, but it will not be a venue by which you will engage the public.
Sure.
There are a few residents there who will, they're members of the public and they'll have input from a resident
Yeah.
perspective.
You'll even get memos from the board planner and engineer once the plans are substantially complete, which is drafted to planning board based on the plans that are presented. So the planner's gonna talk about multiple requirements, setbacks, the height, landscaping. Obviously, the engineers will talk about stormwater management, parking, things of that nature. So
Okay.
it will all be tied together, just like any other project we've been
Super
doing here.
helpful. Okay.
And then the public will come to the planning board hearing on that issue.
Yeah.
That will be a public meeting,
that would be in March.
according to the timeline that's up there.
Yes.
Yeah, it has to be. There's no other room. So I love that idea. I think that's great. So I'll circle up with you. We'll talk through it. Once we know who's on the planning board technical committee, then we can circle up with them and hit our targets here to do.
And we'll have to talk to the acting chairman just to make sure that he knows what's going on.
Okay,
And then we'll put it on the agenda.
okay, copy that.
So somewhat unrelated, but I want to understand, does the planning board hear informal applications?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
But
so
what do you mean by informal?
informal, it doesn't start the clock, it's just an open discussion, it doesn't.
Technical review committee, yes, that would be.
No, I meant the planning board, not the technical review.
I wouldn't recommend doing an informal presentation for the planning board in this circumstance because you don't want to confuse your compliance with section 31 of the land use law.
I agree. Has the planning board ever reviewed an application informally? Rich, are you aware of that?
For an applicant or a developer?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all
Yes.
right, so
It's kind of standard in a way.
I needed that information.
Copy that.
Okay.
Thank you. Attorney
Okay.
Kennedy.
So 16 Feb, if we can meet before Shade Tree and have an open house window, if there's 4 members of the governing body, they're gonna be there. And then 25 Feb, we need to make a decision point. If there'll be 4 more governing body members of the 25 Feb.
Mhm.
What time is the shade tree commission?
7:30.
Can't have 4.
Well, he's saying
need
if
a
there
If
is
there-
no more,
if we
then
tip,
we
then-
have to
Meet at 6.
Do something.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
5 to 7.
Are you looking for volunteers to not show up from the governing body?
I'm looking for a decision point, and quite frankly, if I really want to hit a nail on the head.
Yeah.
Right? This, I'm not gonna say it, never mind.
But what I'm saying, actually, it was sort of a serious question, or was a serious question. If we don't violate that 4, then this can easily be done with 3.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I can't be there on the 16th, so you've got 1.
Can we do it bicentennial vote?
Yeah.
Does it have to be here?
How do you,
No.
or how do you do?
Or in
Depends
Betsy's
on-
kitchen?
Well, it depends on, you know, keeping in mind here, if you're gonna make it a formal governing body meeting, that's very different. From an advertising perspective, from the fact that we couldn't move the Zoom and all of that equipment over there. I think you'd be wise to do it with 3 governing body members on both occasions. That would be my recommendation.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Unless someone has an objection to that.
I'm good with that.
I'm good for the 16th.
Okay.
I feel strongly about being there, and I will position myself at one of the 2 meetings in a way that lets whoever else wants to participate.
Perfect. I appreciate the trust, right? I mean, I know I harp on this, I'm not trying to be cliche, but one team, one fight, right? That it'll be full transparency, and we're working within unique confines, so thank you.
So just be clear, we're not doing a meeting at either meeting. We're having 3 governing body members present on the 16th and 3 governing body members present on the 25th.
25th.
To be determined who they're going to be.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that,
They don't have to be the same.
Right.
right,
No.
I just want to say to me, I'm really glad we're going to open house, and I'm extremely supportive of it. I think we need to temper a little bit our expectations in terms of what we're calling feedback, because given the timeline,
I agree.
I don't even know that we're gonna have substantial changes to what we're planning to do. So maybe on the margins, there is opportunity for feedback. So I would say, I'm interpreting this more as a dialogue and a way of being transparent about what we're doing and sharing where we are at the stage we are in, and of course, adding whatever points that we hear back to the degree we can incorporate them. But I just think, I just want to temper a little bit what
Appreciate
we're
that.
calling full feedback from a community. I think that's something that is done over a month's period of time, not something that is done on the 25th of February, and the council is voting on the 27th on some kind of redesign. So I just think that we should be clear about the dialogue that we're having,
Understood.
so that we're not leading to maybe some misinterpretation of, I think we all are gonna be moving on a very fast timeline with a pretty set proposal. I mean, what you propose there, I think looks like it's really taking shape. By the way, thank you for not making it a rectangle. I think when we come, I was in the zoning board before, so you were in the zoning board as well, and I think the thing we look at is, you don't want to be looking at a rectangle, and you want to be looking at a building that is beautiful, and it has windows, and it has breaks, visual breaks, and so on, so I definitely appreciate that, but I just want to make sure we're tempering what it is that we are expecting in this
So
discussion.
an important, to address that, because I agree with what you said, one of the things, Councilman Lumberger, you may have touched on it, but I might have missed it. Each of these projects will have a professional facilitator who will have a sort of base of data to inform conversation and to really initiate and pull from the public thoughts about how the building can be used in a way in which they will take them, invite them into it in a way that helps them come up with their own contributions. So the facilitation piece is how we will begin to really extract that. So we have, as you point out, a little bit, hopefully a little bit more than just dialogue, we will get some substantive guidance.
And just to add, right, I love the expectation management. I think that's
Yeah.
fantastic. I really appreciate calling that out, because that's really, really important. The second piece is what I think is quote unquote going for us is the level of transparency we've had on this project, right? The discussion since January 9th. I mean, we had 4 meetings in January, right? Every presentation, every discussion. That's why I'm doing presentations, as non-standard as it may be, but there's plenty of reference material out there. So thank you. Mr. Mayor, how do we go about proceeding with articulating it to the public, number 1? I like the idea of Bicentennial Hall, using the space, just if I can think through that just for a day, if there's EV equipment that we might need or might not. Because I don't think there's TVs in Bicentennial Hall.
Nope.
Might be better just to have it here if we can, just because I have the full AV equipment. If I want to do that, I don't want to print stuff just for, lug it back and forth. So just take direction from you with communicating to the public, the mechanisms we can do, and then securing this space, I don't know, 5:30 to 7:30 on the 16th, and then 2 hours, maybe we'll do like coffee and donuts Saturday morning or something, whatever that's.
Shade tree meeting
Shade
at
tree meeting's
7.
at 7:30.
Yeah,
At 7:30.
7:30, that's right. So maybe,
5 to 7.
So 5 to 7 or 5:15 or 6:45, whatever it turns out to be, right?
Why don't I get in touch with Betty Ann right away? Teresa, you agree?
getting it out to public is, not a problem. We have the mechanism to do that. And of course, we certainly can reserve the space, but knowing that it's not going to be, a regular meeting, there's not going to be roll call minutes.
No,
agendas, none
I
of
just
that.
need a 101 to bring it up on the computer and put on the screens, and I'll be fine.
Well, I'm working late the 16th, so I'll be here to help.
I'll bring the coffee.
Let's talk about the time. 2 hours is a long time.
Yeah.
I think.
You guys tell me what to do. I'm a good soldier. I'll show up whatever time you guys tell me you guys think is best. You have more experience than me.
Unless we have visuals that they can look at rather than just.
As an open house, it gives people a chance to sort of commute and cover the kids and get in and out.
Yeah.
Like somebody who comes at 5:30 won't be able to be the same person who comes at 7. So I don't envision it as like, though I won't be there, as a straight 2-hour presentation, but maybe 4 half-hour
Stations.
presentations or
Yeah.
something like that. That, when you said that window and you said open house, that was what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if that,
Picture as well.
good for 2 hours, 90 minutes. I don't think I think over 2 hours is too much.
Well, whatever the time that we advertise is what we have to be there for.
Yeah, I'm good for
Because
2
if
hours.
somebody's like, I'm gonna run for the last 15 minutes and go see, then we have to be there, so.
And if folks have to bounce. it's-
People commuting from New York are not gonna show up there at 5:30, so you definitely wanna have a window that can accommodate people who can come.
Yeah, I'm great with that. So if you're cool with it,
5:30 to 7:50.
done.
Okay.
the times on Saturday.
And then Saturday.
Might as well, if you're gonna.
I mean,
if you're gonna-
5:30 a.m. to 7, and then you can go to the gym afterwards.
Well, if you're gonna send it out, you might, since the times are so close to each other, you might as well give people both options straight up.
So we're gonna do 8 to 10 a.m. Saturday morning?
I can do that.
That's enough time. I just wanna make sure you can be at both, right?
I'll work my gym.
So who's gonna come Thursday night? I'll be there, Tracy will be there.
Yeah,
you could do shifts where people are there for an hour and another hour, and this way you can.
That's not a
I
problem.
know, you don't wanna get into that, you should stick to the same 3 people
Yeah,
And my preference is to be there.
Per night.
per night.
per day,
Okay.
you know. 20
On the other meeting, you can have it different.
You're gonna go 5 to 7:15?
5:30 to
5:30
7:30.
5:30 to 7:15?
And then 8 to 10 a.m. Saturday. We'll circle up offline with who's gonna be where. We'll figure
Okay.
all that out. And I'll work with communications on getting it out. And we just gotta reserve the space. But thank you. I know we took up a lot of time, but it was important.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilman
Thanks.
Rivera.
Winning that landmine, I'm gonna call it.
Moving along to new business, council committee reports, finance, I know we touched a lot on this at the beginning of the meeting, it's Councilwoman Neff, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add.
I don't really think there's
Okay.
anything additional to say other than clearly, we have an issue. I think it's been brewing for several years now. We need to figure out what we're gonna do as, the finance committee and the council now. And then I think as Councilman Barbera mentioned, we need a plan for going forward, because I think there will have to be some structural changes that we should look into. Because I suspect we're gonna run into issues every year going forward, because that's what I've seen since I've been in the finance committee, 2 years ago. So I'll just suggest that that's something to keep in mind. We're gonna need a short-term plan and a long-term plan.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Personnel followed by Parks and Recreation, Councilwoman Hoey.
Sure. Personnel, we have a few open roles we'd like to post, which are pending, guidance on the 2023 budget. We're gonna have a few considerations tonight in the executive session, so we'll more to come on that. And our next personnel meeting will be February 21st.
Recreation, we have a lot going on. Registration is currently open for the for the father-daughter dance, which will take place on March 10th and 11th. Registration for the mother-son dance, which is taking place April 21st and 22nd, will open on February 15th. Both dances open for grades 1 through 5, which is the same as it was pre-COVID. All the spring recreation coaches will be asked to complete the Rutgers coaching clinic, and that information will be is posted on the recreation website. All spring sports registration can be found on the rec website, including baseball, softball, and lacrosse. Today is the last day to register for baseball and t-ball. Opening day parade, April 22nd. All recreation summer camp information, including marine science camp information, has been sent out, and that information can be found on the Borough website as well. And marine science does actually open tomorrow at 12 p.m. and parents are encouraged to open an account ahead of time because we do expect the sessions to fill up very quickly. Marine science typically offers us 2 weeks in the summer. We have 5 this year, which is great, and we will push for more in the coming years.
Great, thank you, Councilwoman Ho. Moving along, the planning board, Councilwoman Koch.
Thank you, Mayor. As discussed previously, our next planning board meeting is February 21st. We'll make a couple of tweaks to the agenda. Also during that meeting, we will continue to review and then appoint some of our professionals to the board. That's it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Koch. Moving along, Police Fire Office of Emergency Management, Councilman Rodriguez.
Thank you, sir. Saturday night, the firehouse had its installation dinner. Was attended by a number of folks on the governing body and our professionals. It was a nice affair.
Is it true there's some incriminating pictures of you at that event, Councilman?
Nothing I would say that's incriminating. But there are some fun pictures.
Fun pictures.
Yeah, fun was had by all you guys. Some of you guys were missed. Understand there were conflicts. So, secondly, we Councilman LaBarbera and I will be meeting with the new chief and other line chiefs to discuss budget items and other needs that they have for 2023. I'll tell them they can't have anything. Just kidding. We'll hear out what they need, and we'll try to figure out what we can do about those things. So that's coming down the pipe in the next week or two. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Moving along, Engineering DPW, followed by Borough Facilities and Zoning Board, Councilman LaBarbera.
Check. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm gonna start with zoning board. Zoning board is prepared to provide some feedback on the fence ordinance. It's going to be really 3 perspectives. One, that the assessment shows that we do have a standard fence ordinance commensurate with our local towns. There's likely some need for some additional education and communication, so I'll be reaching out to Councilman Cole. And then also that there needs to be potentially a new form to enhance it. So more to come on that. Councilwoman Koch and I are working to address potentially some outdated ordinances. We've identified 4 initially, so more to come with that. What I also want to highlight too is that we're working to do what's called a proof of concept. We've identified 2 bookend processes, and many thanks to Carolyn for her support. One is going through zoning for a commercial building, and the other one is a new fence for a resident. And what this proof of concept is going to look like is to digitize the process. It's going to have the process be aligned with what the best practice is for these types of processes, and hopefully enhance user friendliness with the community. So more to come on that. Switching to engineering and DPW, I'm not going to have anything else on facilities, Mr. Mayor. Switching to engineering and DPW, in addition to what we talked about, I want to give kudos to Rich and Nick. Their safety operation manuals and protocols have all been updated, which I think is fantastic. They have an annual requirement for drug and alcohol clearinghouse annual query. So the U.S. Department of Transportation and the FMCSA completed all that. They're making sure that these items get taken care of. We're working with DPW to put together a 5-year vehicle maintenance plan. This is really, really important to call out because we heard from Vic who left and a few other folks the need to build maintenance into our budget. the need to identify what maintenance is. So we're kind of creating a little model off of vehicles, which is pretty finite, pretty black and white, and will allow that to kind of segue into other key components of maintenance. The other aspect here too that I want to call out, and Chief, I just want to, Mr. Mayor, I want to echo your initial sentiment on finance, right? Rich and I are going to be sitting down and we're going to be putting together a list of all DPW land use and engineering projects. And we're going to put it together in a prioritization matrix. There's going to be a ton of requirements. We're going to brief the whole governing body. But at the end of the day, we are going to have to make some very hard decisions with what we do this year. There's going to be things that we should wait just because of maintenance, master plans, et cetera. And we want to just be positioned with a standardized process to do that. The other thing I just want to talk real quick, Mr. Mayor, is the brush and leaf committee. And there's 12 volunteers that have volunteered their time to support this. We'll be having a meeting in a few weeks, an initial kickoff call, I guess you could say, in person. Some more to come on that. That's all I got.
Thank you, Councilman Barbera. Borough Communications and Community Outreach, Councilwoman Cole.
Thank you, Mayor. The Outreach Communications Committee met 2 weeks ago. We discussed a series of communications matters. I want to focus this evening's report on a discussion we have regarding communications with the community as it relates to construction. Construction by its nature is disruptive. It can be aggravating, but the communications piece is really one of our main tools we have to communicate with our residents and let them know this is what we know, so you can be as prepared as possible. There are two primary communication pieces that get to residents. One is communication, or a short paragraph, really, a letter from the contractor or utility company, whatever the contractors work, whoever the contractor is working for. In most cases, they're working for us. And then any communications that come from our communication director, Betty Ann, with of course Teresa, who puts eyes on these things to check them. And we have in the past had discrepancies in factual as well as just question marks. So what we decided as a team was that we needed at least a 48-hour window to merge the communications there, whatever is written from the contractor and whatever is coming out from our offices here at the Borough Hall are synced up, make sense, and they jive. So by requesting 48 hours from the contractor, their communication will then get approved by our communications director, and then it'll be released to the contractor, so the contractor will have permission and know with confidence that they can circulate this communication on their own. Of course, then we'll continue to do communications that we do through the Buzz and Nixle and all the other platforms that are available to our communications director. I would like to call out Diane and Teresa, who take a very they take an advocate's role when representing our residents, and in particular in the case of working with utilities, we are going to have some utility activity in Fairhaven. Teresa does a very good job sort of body blocking, and her posture is one of we're going to take care of our residents, and I just want to commend you for that. It's important and we appreciate it. That posture will be continued. Our next public I wanted to also just acknowledge and call out again, there will be public outreach sessions on the 16th and the 25th. And our next outreach and communications meeting will be on the 15th. The Environmental Commission, I just want to touch on this very quickly, is meeting next week. And they're going to be hosting a roundtable on the 23rd. And that completes my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman Cole. Moving along, introduction of ordinances 2023-01, index rate COLA ordinance. Does anyone have any questions? No, does anyone have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Cole,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Patch,
Yes.
Barbera,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
and Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. The hearing and adoption will be held on February 27th. Now moving along to the consent agenda, resolutions 2023-58 through 2023-67. Before I ask for a motion, does anyone want to separate any of these or have any questions on them? No.
Mr. Mayor, the only thing that I thought would be helpful is to call out the paper shredding so that the public understands that's a service for them. I don't know that everybody, I'm sure it'll go in the bus. We'll make sure folks know about it, but it actually is a chance to come bring your household papers and have them shredded. They'll be at the field.
And it doesn't cost us anything.
No,
So kudos to
Yeah,
Teresa,
nice
Allison,
one.
make that happen.
thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second,
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Cole,
Yes,
Poe,
Yes.
Koch,
yes.
Calabelle,
Yes.
Neff,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes,
Thank you. Department reports, January 2023. Do I have a motion to accept the reports as submitted?
Motion with a kudos to Allison and Betty Ann for their continued stellar work on this. building.
here, here.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Now we are to the good of the borough portion of our meeting. Please stand and identify yourself by clearly stating your name and address for the record. Please try to observe a time limit of 3 minutes. Is there anyone in the public? Oh, sir, come close and. Yep.
First of all, thank you guys. How are you all?
Hi.
Great.
I have to say, 98% of my life in Fairhaven, I don't want any of your jobs.
Quick, just quick name and address.
Sorry, Colin Burns, 251 Cambridge Avenue, Fairhaven. I have a letter here that we put together. What I'm going to briefly speak to you guys about is the situation with the parking and pick up and drop off issue going on Cambridge Avenue across from Red Ridge. So as I said, my name is Colin Burns. I've been a resident of Fairhaven since 1983, and along with a group of Cambridge Avenue residents present here at the meeting, collectively, we reside on Cambridge Avenue for over 150 years. We are all aware of the significant changes over time that have created the current hazardous traffic situation we are dealing with. When we initially moved into our towns, the biggest issue with Red Bank regional traffic were a handful of school buses, sporting events, and the annual graduation ceremony. But in recent years, the number of vehicles using Cambridge Avenue as an overflow parking lot has increased dramatically. In addition to an increased student body and faculty staff, now at approximately 1,500 people, post-pandemic, fewer students are taking the bus and more parents are driving their kids to and from school. At the same time, more young children are living on Cambridge, as well as several disabled residents. So safety has become even more paramount. The drop-off and pickup of Red Bank Regional students continues to create extremely unsafe conditions. Parents park in front of our driveways, pull into our driveways, pull onto our lawns, run over sprinkler heads, double park, stop in the middle of the road to pick up a child, and idle for long periods every day. This is an accident that is waiting to happen. For 180 days a year, 60 to 70 vehicles belonging to Red Bank Regional drivers are present on Cambridge twice a day. In an ideal world, Red Bank Regional would make provisions for drop off and pickup on their school property. To address this, we've made several attempts to contact Red Bank Regional Superintendent Lewis Moore to obtain his assistance. However, to date, our phone calls have not been returned. We do have a letter and petition in hand that we plan to deliver to the high school. We're happy to share it with you, and we encourage you to sign it. The Borough of Fairhaven has consistently addressed residents' concerns over safety issues throughout the town. We are simply asking that Cambridge Avenue receive the same treatment as other streets in town, such as 3rd and Willow Streets, Hanson Fairhaven Road, and Kemp Avenue. We are asking that a plan be put into place to eliminate the use of Cambridge as an overflow parking lot for Red Bank Regional. And I know there are many of us here and on Zoom and on the petition that have suggestions for that plan of alleviation. So let me close by stating that every one of us was aware of the vicinity to RBR when we purchased our homes. However, that does not mean we should be denied a safe street to live on. Others in town with similar proximity to high traffic areas and have had accommodations made for them. The simple fact that Red Bank Regional is not located in Fairhaven does not change the need for a safe environment. Every resident of Fairhaven deserves a safe place to live, regardless of their particular location in town. Thank you.
It's an issue.
I'd like to, first of all, I know, Colin, I spoke to you on your doorstep a few months ago. And I've had some communication, obviously, about this topic. I also want to point out, and I kind of want to get some more information as far as I understand on 3rd Street, we shut the street down. But some of the other streets, what you meant by accommodation. I'd like to hear from the chief a little bit, if it's possible, because I know that you've met with him. I know that there's, I've seen some cones out and some new activity there. Where we're at, your thoughts?
We met a couple times.
We met once in August and once in October.
And so we met a couple times. Then we decided to get some signs, we put them out there to try to discourage people from dropping off. They're not enforceable. We just made them up from there. That seemed to help for a very temporary time, a little bit. We met with the school 3 times now with the superintendent, with Little Silver Police. They were very accommodating and they know there's a problem. They're trying to redesign the parking lot to make the flow easier. What's happening, people go in there and they get stuck and they can't get back out. So that's why they're dropping off on Cambridge. And like, I agree 100% that COVID really increased it, because before, once COVID happened, the kids got used to being driven to school. We have the same problem in our schools. And then nobody's really gone back, not yet. So after COVID, it really increased. They had suggestions about permit parking, no parking, but I don't think that's going to alleviate the drop off. That's really what the problem, the drop off and pickup. And no parking is not going to solve that. So the school really needs to have.
Meaning people still do it, even if it says no parking?
Parking, you can still drop off, right? So that won't stop the drop off.
May I interject? I lived in Hoboken after college, and we had the same exact type of situation. They required residents to buy resident permit parking passes only. Those signs would say resident parking only, no idling, no drop off, no pickup between certain hours. That was it. We had a sticker on our car, situation was alleviated. I don't see how it's any big different with this situation, Joe. I know we've talked about this many times, but I just don't see how that's a problem. And if it was to somehow then butterfly effect out from Cambridge to Harvard or Princeton or to Rutgers where you live, or to Oxford, you could issue the same type of permit parking. And we're only talking about a small hours, Monday through Friday. From what we've discussed, from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Nothing during the day, midday, nothing at night, nothing on the weekends. A way to get these people off of the street. It's really become an incredible nuisance. Sue's lived on the street longer than my family has. And it was never like this before. There has to be a change that needs to be made. The high school is not answering us. I appreciate if they're getting back to the police department, but they're ignoring us. So we need help.
Yeah, so I would like to continue hearing what the chief has to say. One thing I just want to say there is it's not confined to your street.
It's primarily.
What you're talking about is RBR.
Right.
And I'm talking about is a more existential problem where, we get complaints over by Knollwood for the schools that roll into Knollwood. We get complaints.
Cambridge is a recipient of
We're
that as well.
we're not.
No, but where I'm going with this is ultimately, even if you set up the parking signs, I think the issue becomes enforcement. And if you have all these different streets having the same issue all over town, we're not blessed with the police department that Hoboken has. My concern is going to be, how are they going to enforce these rules? And then my concern is the next feedback we get is, how come we have these rules? How come the police aren't enforcing the rules? So I'm not saying that your suggestion is a bad one. I'm just wondering if there might be a better one that would actually stop the problem.
We're right out here.
Yeah, like I said, with the school, in the spring, they're looking at, there's a lot of suggestions they made about putting another parking lot behind the Board of Education and RBR. There's they're looking at putting more parking back there.
Like where the baseball fields are?
Yeah, there's like a spot between the baseball field and the thing. They're looking about putting no parking there. They're looking about putting an entrance off of Harding Municipal. I agree. When that school was designed back before our time, it was a bad design because you have no entrances other than in Fairhaven. You're putting every kid, every person coming or going to Fairhaven. There should have been an entrance on Harding Municipal. There should have been an exit on Hans, but we weren't here when they designed that. So we all work with the school. The school has been very cooperative. They haven't done it yet. So, a year from now, they were cooperative. They haven't done it yet. But I'm not so sure. Is that no drop off enforceable? We have you can have no parking, no stopping.
I used to do work for Bayonne. I
Yeah.
just know it's extremely the administrative burden to do resident parking passes is like there's an office that does it. You can shoot no stopping and standing between those hours, and then it's your drive-by.
How does, this is New York City, so it might not equate to New Jersey, but we used to have alternate side parking. You know, and it would be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can't park on this side of the street from 8 to 10 AM. It was just a sign up that said you couldn't do it. What if there were just signs up that said you?
That's
what I'm
Well,
saying.
we tried that, we put, no, but we tried no drop off.
But we put signs up there on enforceable. If you had literally signs, metal signs implanted that say no parking or no idling, no drop off, people are going to, for the most part around here, they're gonna hear.
I live across from Battle of Express, so
You have signs that say that? Do they do it anyway or no?
sometimes, but it definitely cuts it down. I mean, look, not everyone's gonna follow the signs, but like I live across from there, and
Do they say specific times?
they say no stopping and standing, and it doesn't say idling, this is no stopping and standing at the top of the street. Like I live in the back of the neighborhood and the high school's across the street, so people would pull up to the top right across and drop their kids off.
Exactly.
Yeah, on the side streets, and then down when you get into my neighborhood, it's no parking, or 2-hour parking, from 6 AM to 10 AM on school days. So that they can't park the kids, it's a high school, so the kids park down there, they don't want to do the parking pass, or they want to smoke cigarettes.
Well, the more problem is the drop off and pick up. Right, the parking's easy to solve.
The general signs work better.
Pick up and drop off.
Pickup's the biggest issue.
Yeah, pick up and drop off. The parking itself, right, because when they're coming, then they're stopping, they're waiting for the kids. So no stopping, no standing would work. I'm talking about the actual drop off wouldn't work, because you can still drop off there, right? It doesn't say no drop off, it says no stopping.
What's the definition?
Depends on which street one of our officers is sitting on that day. We also have 3 times as many officers.
Oh, yeah, that's also like school time. So our school's times, it's kind of all same, everything that is during that same time.
What do you, let's say we did something like that, what do you see as the action, reaction? What's the reaction? What's the change in behavior of these cars? Where are they going? They're gonna go in the lot then? In RBR? Are they gonna go on a different street? What are they gonna
I
do?
think you go to a different street, they may start dropping off around Ridge Road.
On Ridge Road.
Yeah, but so I think if we do one street, we have to do at least, 200 feet back on all 3 streets, or at least on Oxford. I think it will push it to Oxford. I don't think we'll push it so much to Rutgers. I think it will be Oxford. We'll push it to.
Well, I want to comment that Little Silver has done, no parking signs on all their streets. So this is exacerbating it. They have the temporary signs now on that one section of Harding Road.
Yeah, you
with
can't
the
pull
little
over, and drop the
triangles.
kids off there.
And the bike trail paths have made it impossible on Ridge Road.
I mean, what we
So
could
that's
do,
another change
it's
every
gonna,
time.
what we could do, it's gonna, we could put cones so you can't pull over the side street for a while. That's not gonna affect you, and then see what happens, see if that helps. We
But
could
the
take
people
this-
At the end of the day, it's not about being made uncomfortable, it's the safety issue. There are people, I take care of both my parents, my father has Alzheimer's, my mother has Parkinson's. I take care of them, I worry they're gonna get hit by one of these kids. If they're driving out of high school, they fly down our street, or the parents that are there are rude and aloof. You ask them to move out of your driveway, they're constantly, Sue is trying to take pictures to send to you there. And the woman that she just took a picture from her own yard, followed her up to her house and started banging on her door, asking why she's taking pictures of her.
Why, the one part I didn't understand that you said kids are flying down the street.
Well,
Why are kids
also
from
go
RBR
across the
coming down your
from
street?
RBR,
Why are
little
they-
kid drivers, and they fly.
Where are they going?
Well, no, they park there.
They go down Cambridge and they
Take
take
off
Harvard
after
and they go over to Harrison
And
and
they
hit Red Bank, they live over. And they come.
Instead of just making a left onto the road.
Yeah, no, they come straight out of the main entrance of RBR.
Instead of making a left,
right
they go
across
straight.
to Cambridge, down the street, and then they bang it left.
The thing that needs to be solved, the kids come from Red Bank, Little Silver, Shrewsbury. When people going to Little Silver and Shrewsbury have no reason to be in Fairhaven. They need to go south.
Yeah, so now we're talking about, see that, now we're talking about you can't drive into Fairhaven.
We're not saying that, we're just simply saying that, that they, she's right in the aspect of, they don't need to be there. They don't need to come out of those towns, into our town to pick up their kids and then go back. If we can put up some sort of a deterrent for them being there for those few hours a day, again, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, a few hours in the morning, a few in the afternoon. And Joe, I agree with you. I think we put it on in Oxford as well. But if you put those signs in, you're gonna deter these people. And how is it also not a way for the town to start writing tickets off?
Yeah.
May I ask just a quick question?
Yeah.
I just wanna, let's make a couple assumptions real quick, right?
Sure.
Okay, put the signs in, doesn't stop it, then what? I just wanna play this out just a little bit, right? Hang on, no, just hear me out.
If it doesn't work after we put
You
signs
put
in,
signs on, right, we're assuming that the sign is gonna be a deterrent,
and
right?
then you have police officers that force that off with those signs.
So that's the question, right?
That doesn't work.
Then we get into a resource constraint, right, with where the police officers are at that time, right? And we have a 2-officer minimum.
There's nobody getting murdered. I think you're right.
Well, I
We're
just,
talking about DWIs like speeding
But
tickets.
again, that time of day is the same time with those.
Correct.
This is very good.
we want our police at our school.
But it's not, it's earlier than that. It's a half hour earlier. There's a grammar school and elementary school. They have later than the high school across the street.
One person at a time, she takes a minute.
Yes, Bill, the clerk.
These are rocket science.
And I actually decided, with the advice of some other people on Cambridge, to also address Red Bank Regional as independently as residents, because it's very nice that you're doing this, but they're not hearing our voices. So we did put together a letter. I got to speak to every resident on our street, and I have almost every signature. A couple of people are out of town. It's not just at the end that we live on, the Ridge Road end, all the way down Harvard and Princeton. And the people at the other end are in the newer homes, they're young families, and they are worried, they're scared. This one woman's telling me I'm leaving at that time to try to get to Knollwood or Sickles to pick up my children. I can't get out of my driveway. Someone parked in front of my driveway. I try to put my kids into the car, they're toddlers, I have 3 kids, and they might run into the street, and I can't manage them all at once. It's a safety issue. It's like a problem waiting to happen. So I'm asking that the council also go to the Red Bank High School. We need the support. They cut down all the trees. There are neighbors and nobody gave a hoot. And now they're gonna run over one of our kids and nobody's giving a hoot. We need maybe the government to also be part of the solution. It's not just a bunch of people. I have 40 signatures on here. That's 20 people. It can't just be, we need a combined effort and look at this as a community. And if we live on this peninsula, why are we not looking for some communities?
Would you be open, can we circle up after the meeting and talk through that? I'm willing to help you guys out. Let's talk through it.
We're very frustrated because we contacted.
Totally hear that.
The police last February.
Yep.
So it's a year has passed and there's been an attempt with the signage, but it has not been effective.
And Susan, once again, you were about to say nothing's happened. I think they did make a goodwill attempt.
It's not been successful because RBR is
I
not
think-
been talking, but there's no action.
I agree. Well, you're saying there's no action. I think there was action. I agree with you from what you're saying and what it sounds like. It hasn't been effective. I think the concern is that we put something in place again that's not effective. We want an effective solution that works for everyone.
I don't think that they just want us to implement anything that's not gonna be
Right.
effective. Obviously, Chief has reached out to them, he's reached out to the Little Silver Police Department, and he's spoken with the school there. What we reached out is residents who live across the street from the school for many more years than the people that actually work there, and we don't get a response back.
Right.
So maybe if we combine all of our powers between Chief, some of you guys, reach out to them and let's all just fix it. Let's figure out what the situation is, and let's come up with a smart plan to make it alleviated for everyone and safer for everyone. That's all we're asking.
I think that's what the councilman was offering. He wanted to get more information.
You do the no parking for like a month and have active controlling of it. And then the people say, the high school says, no, what happened to all my drivers, what can we do? And maybe they'll get interested if their temporary parking lot in Fairhaven goes away.
So let's do this. So Councilman Rodriguez and I, we're gonna partner up. Let's have a discussion. Let's come up with something of action. I agree. One team, one fight, right? It's between residents, police, governing body that will provide a little bit more authoritativeness when reaching out to hopefully elicit a response, and let's go from there. Right, but without saying, we hear you, we know it's frustrating, it's gotta suck, quite frankly, right, to deal with that on both ends of the spectrum, from kids all the way up to the parents that you're taking care of. And safety is our number one concern, right? That's why we're moving as quick as we are with the facility. So we hear you. Chris and I are on it, right? And we move quick.
Appreciate it.
I'll just have one little thing.
Yes.
My kids are at RFH, and we get communications all the time from the superintendent about traffic patterns and how we drop off, pick up. And very often, I think the police are either copied or the directive is coming in cooperation with the police from the superintendent to the parents.
From the Rumson Fairhaven High School.
Yes, we
Right.
get
We're talking
instructions
about Redmond.
about how to and how not
Yeah,
to.
That would be great.
they did, or did
I
send
did
that
get
out. I didn't see it myself, they did send out a similar thing about not to park there anymore. And it did help for a week or two, right? It slowed up.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Exactly. we could-
I think if they think nobody sees them, they can continue doing it. You know, if they know it's not right, they know they're just getting away with it. So continued reinforcement of that message is gonna help to change behavior.
Yeah, I'd be interested in what the long-term plan is on their facilities, of their flow through their parking lot. That's gonna be
For sure.
the thing that really makes the change.
Which
It's not signs
They
or,
added a huge addition and
After
made no
we-
changes.
yeah,
After we initially met with Joe and his traffic enforcement officers in town, who I know well, we all said, let's give them a chance to get back to us. They got back to the police department, but the neighbors across the street, once again, they just ignore us. We leave message after message with principal, superintendent, and there's no response. So that said, Sue does have a copy for you guys of the petition we put together, just so you guys can view it and take a look at it, just so you can see all of the citizens in town at the time.
That'd be great.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you,
we'll talk
Susan,
after.
Colin.
We'll talk after.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the time.
Thanks for keep taking.
Is there anyone else in the public with good of the borough? Anyone in the public? No? Allison, anyone online?
Marissa Kay.
Hi, Marissa.
Hi there. Hi, good evening, everyone. It's Marissa Kay, 229 Cambridge. I just wanted to say a nice PS to everybody. I know you just wrapped that, so sorry. But I wanted to thank my neighbors for standing up there tonight. They are not under exaggerating any of this, so we look forward. Or they're not, I mean, if anything, I think they were being extremely respectful. It's gotten way worse. I work at home. I watch every single day. And we need your help without question. So I think it's just a matter of time before someone gets hurt, whether it's an RBR student, an adult, or one of our own neighbors. So I wanted to thank you for taking the time to hear them out, and thank Susan and crew for going there tonight on our behalf. But I would think if you came and hung out with us for 20 minutes in the afternoon and did your work from our front lawn, you would see that we all should be much more frustrated, actually. So it's very scary and daunting. So thank you in advance for whatever it is that you all try to do. And I'm happy to weigh in, Chris, when you guys all discuss. And I can send you as many videos as you need, because I can see all of it and all of the loiterers. And the one thing I can say, I think cones would help a lot. I am a parent. I've done rolling drop off. I've also been guilty of doing things like these parents before in life. I would never think to do what a lot of them have the audacity to do. And the signs at the edge of the street just pushed the traffic that much further back. So this morning, this afternoon, I actually had someone perpendicular in front of my driveway and somebody else in the middle of the street with their doors wide open, with teenagers flying back and forth. And also, if you can imagine, people are not going 25, even though the 25 is there once they leave. So, I don't know how it's going to be solved, but it needs to be addressed, and it's only gotten worse. So I appreciate the time and energy, and I've never been on Zoom or a webinar, and I've never been on, I've never done this before. So here I am. Hi. I don't know if you'll ever see me again, but I will take all videos that you need, and I appreciate all the hard work that you all do.
Thank you, Marissa. You're a natural. Come visit us more often.
And it's 9:45. What else am I doing?
When do we put the signs in?
Go put the signs in. You're right.
Real quick question on that, Greg. What's, can she send us videos of what she's seeing?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. We have plenty of video and photo evidence as well. We've taken it.
Great.
Quite a bit.
We'll make some B-roll.
Yeah, yeah.
People take pictures.
So black and white,
After they see
panoramic.
me take one
Cool.
of them, like this, so,
Thank you, Marissa.
it's unbelievable.
You're welcome. Anytime you guys need me to get license plates, I'm on it.
Get the screwdriver.
Allison, is there anyone else on Zoom?
That's a way to end the meeting.
Yes, this place. Go ahead, Mrs. Blazer.
Hi, Ruth.
Good evening. Question, is there a functioning warming center?
Warming center?
A warming center.
Can you say that again, Ruth?
Do we have a functioning warming center?
For when it's cold out, you mean?
Yeah, and in the summer for when it's really, really hot.
We usually use
Don't-
bicentennial.
Bicentennial Hall.
Okay, how do people get there? I mean, how do they know?
But it'd only be open if we had like a power outage
Yeah.
for some reason that we think people wouldn't have air conditioning or heat. But
It's-
on a normal day, no, it's not.
It's more of an emergency.
Correct. And we-
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Powers.
What are you talking about, Ruth? What's the situation that you're getting
No,
at?
this has been a procedure for the past couple of years. And people have been alerted, and I assume they have to call the police department.
Well, if we have a need for it, we'll work with a warming center and then Betty Ann puts that message out. If we have a need for it.
Just throw a blast out as needed.
But it's already set up, that's what I'm asking. In other words,
Yes.
okay. My other comment is in the plans that you have for the new community center and police department. I would suggest you go down to the Red Bank Library on Front Street. They have 3 or 4 parking spaces that you can actually sit in your car and use their Wi-Fi. This might be a nice add-on for the building, for your technology, to share it with the residents.
Just, you mean that you're able to be in your car on your Wi-Fi, or just that we have Wi-Fi?
No. Actually, they have 3 or 4 marked parking spaces that get Wi-Fi. In other words, the library does not have to be open. It's accessible, and I think it's a really great idea.
My only concern with that idea, Ruth, is, I think it would encourage people to idle in their cars, which is something that we don't really want. I hear you though. I
But
mean,
the idea
it's
of
an interesting
Wi-Fi
idea. I do understand why you're pitching it, and I think we'll discuss it thoughtfully and see if it makes any sense for Fairhaven.
We already have a meeting scheduled with our IT professional, the shared service that we have. I'll take it to him and see what the assessment is.
Make sure you run that by the green team too.
I don't know that people would have to idle their cars. They could just sit in their cars if their phones are charged or their tablets are charged. I know when we had the power outage for quite a while, people were lining up and going to the Fairhaven Library, and they had a charger or an outlet because they had power. They had the generator, and the residents could go there and charge their phones when they didn't have power in their homes.
I understand that. I do think ultimately though, in the dog days of August and it's 85 degrees out, or, this past weekend when it's 15 degrees out, people are gonna be running their cars. And I think there might be pushback, but Ruth, I do love the idea.
No. This is for when the facilities aren't open.
Well, the facilities, might not be open lots of different times when the weather's not nice. And that's gonna lead to people idling in their cars. That's my concern.
We'll take it away and we'll follow up with you, Ruth.
Thank you, my dear.
Anyone else, Allison?
No.
That being said, we're going to move to executive session. No formal action will be taken. 9:50 p.m.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to close the meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? 10:13 p.m.
Unmanageable.